Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Hinata get to know past about Naruto and goes back in time to save Naruto part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. As the days passed after the end of the Fourth Shinobi War, Hinata Hyuga seemed to have gotten a new drive and purpose. She was already approaching her 30s while looking as regal and fresh as a teen in their 20s. Whatever had happened during the last moments with Naruto Uzumaki, her crush and love interest from an age of 6 years old had made the previous shy and timid Hinata into a fearsome and dangerous person. The betrayal of Sasuke Uchiha, again, had managed to claim the life of her crush, and she had brutally slaughtered him in front of the entire shinobi forces. His pleas for mercy had made even the most battle-hardy and ruthless people flinch as she used the training under the Godame Hokage and world's greatest female medic to personally shatter every bone and tear apart most of his muscles as she destroyed his Sharingan, while keeping him alive and allowing him to die only after she destroyed his genitals with a chakra-enhanced strike that caused them to blow like an explosive tag. Sasuke had entered the camp under the pretense of surrendering. When he was alone, he had managed to attack Naruto from behind and used reverse summoning to send Tsunade Senju and Naruto to Madara. Hinata had managed to disable 2 of the arrays, but Naruto had been already taken and his Biju extracted. The Toads had managed to once again reverse summon him, but the damage had been done. Naruto had died the next day using the same jutsu both the Sandame and Yandame had used, the Shiki Fuyin, while sealing the incomplete 10 tails. He had died with a smile on his face while lamenting to Hinata that he was unable to marry her and keep his promise to her. Naruto had managed to transfer his entire chakra into her, giving her nearly 3 tails of chakra due to his vast reserves, making her an Uzumaki in terms of chakra. For Hinata, that was as good as marriage. That day, the second aka Noshur, Crimson Death, was born, where she had bathed in the blood of her enemies, including traitors and Zetsu clones. Her entire youthful frame was crimson red with the blood she shed, and even though she had not gotten to kill Madara or fight him, she had gotten both Kabuto and Orochimaru in a 2-on-1 fight where she had secretly managed to knock them out and sealed them using Fuin jutsu she had learned from her beloved Naruto and his customized Fuin tags on making a person or a corpse to be kept in suspended animation in a separate dimension. To prevent people getting suspicious, she had used their blood to create blood clones to simulate their dead bodies to the people. Hinata now had only a single purpose, that was to go back in time and take what was denied to Naruto and in turn her. That was why she had taken both Orochimaru and Kabuto. She needed their knowledge and medical expertise. And for this purpose she was living. Her moniker from the war had scared the old Coots on the Hyuga Council, who remembered the dangerous Kushina Uzumaki and her prowess, and they had decided in all their wisdom to challenge her authority over the clan and insult her devotion to Naruto's memory. She had simply slaughtered them all, leaving only the moderate factions alive, and her actions had caused her to gain notoriety in the entire Konoha as the Ice Maiden. No one had since that day questioned her devotion to Naruto's memory, and even the Godame Tsunade Senju had given her the title of Honorable Uzumaki, as she was one of the last relatives of Naruto but never told him that. Hinata had over the period of last several years had commanded the use of root tunnels and hideouts that were located deep underneath Konoha, and even few of the labs of Orochimaru that had not been discovered till this day. She had broken both missing nin using torture and Fuin jutsu, and then disposed them by drowning them into an acid bath. From Tsunade and Orochimaru she had learned about medical knowledge and poisons and their antidotes, while from Kabuto she had learned his self-healing technique and his vast experiments, including the improved Edo Tensei. Naruto had left her several scrolls that he had gotten from Sandame and Jiraiya on Fuin jutsu, and she had learned all of them, and using them, removed the caged bird seal and abolished it. She also managed to learn the Hirishin, but the Yandame had cleverly tied the formula activation to Uzumaki blood. He himself had been injected with both Senju and Uzumaki blood and hence able to use the much-feared technique. She also crafted a new taijutsu style using Jukin and chakra scalpels, and her chakra control was finer than Tsunade and Sakura Harino, both renowned as best female medics, which included Shizen Kato and herself. Hinata had also tried to recreate the chakra chains that Kushina Uzumaki was famous for, but she had failed to form more than 3 chains, which were deadly when she was using taijutsu. She had, from raiding the root hideouts, managed to learn several secrets about Konoha and about plans crafted by Danzo Orochimaru alliance, which had resulted in the death of Sandame Hokage, and several other horrifying things that had been done by Root. She knew that the jutsu she would use would only send back her memories and half of her chakra back to her younger self. She had to time it correctly so that no one would get suspicious, and in a clan that could see chakra coils and tenketsu that was next to impossible. She then created several plans and backups in order to prevent herself from failing to save Naruto. She had vowed to make things right for her beloved, and even though she had to raze Konoha to the ground, she would do it. Her plans and preparations were complete, including her affairs, which were all sorted, and now she had only to wait to visit him last time. The next day, Hinata Hyuga woke up at 5. A habit she had ingrained in herself since the day she had been saved by Nato from the bullies during her academy days, so that she could go out early and stalk or observe her hero before coming back to her clan compound for breakfast. Her father had never questioned her about this habit of hers, and she had learned many things about her crush. She had got up while looking the same beautiful deadly woman that Naruto had admitted her to be while dying, and posed in front of the full-length mirror in just her lacy undergarments, and imagining Naruto being with her while he did several naughty things to her. She had gotten a clothing set from Naruto during the war that was lined with seals, which was a marvel for several shinobi and kunoichi, and even blocked Byakugan and Sharingan. Those clothes had saved her life many times in battles, and she had after the war decoded those seals and applied on her most clothes. She dressed herself while looking over her room, leaving no traces of her experiments and presence. She hid her will under several genjutsu and locking seals that would disperse when her experiment would end and she would no longer be in this world. She thanked Kurina Yuhi for teaching her subterfuge and patience to deal with others. Casting a single glance, she wrapped herself in the cloak that Naruto gave her, and she decided to go face the music. As she left her room and compound, she found several of her clansmen waiting for her at the gates. She sighed to herself softly while cursing mentally for forgetting that today most would come to visit the place where Naruto was buried on Konoha grounds in the Hokage crypts as an honor for saving the world from destruction. The procession moved, and after half a day Hinata came back while muttering to herself about people wasting her time. She knew that both Tsunade and Shikamaru suspected her due her unexamined disappearances from the village, and she took all the precautions she could take. That was why she knew that Shikamaru and her old teammate Kiba had to be neutralized for her experiment to work without interruption. Shino had already been out of the country with his wife on her insistence as a wedding gift to them after the war. Also, the act had gotten her scrutiny to lessen from Tsunade but not Shikamaru. He was as clever as Danzo and more paranoid than him. He was known as the advisor to Hokage, but in reality, he was the head of the ANBU Black Ops Division. Walking to the gates of Training Ground 44, she found Shikamaru waiting for her, as she had instructed him to meet her at the ceremony for Naruto's memorial. She flared her Byakugan before coming into his view and found his hidden guard that included 4 ANBU. Sighing to herself, she released her shadow clones to dispatch them and focused on what was going to be her biggest hurdle. "Why have you called me here, Hinata, on such a troublesome day?" came his lazy voice where he was leaning against the locked gates. "You don't have to act now, Shikamaru. I know what have you been planning for me," spoke the cold voice of Hinata Hyuga. "So you admit to it, huh? Why confront me then? What are you doing, Hinata, and how would this end? I hope you have not been doing what is wrong," spoke Shikamaru while going alert and signaling his guards to get ready. His mind flashed through several scenarios, but for once what Hinata had been doing had been eluded him completely. She was doing something dangerous and reckless that he knew from her obsession in Fuinjutsu and Kinjutsus. Hinata had been known after the war ended as a scholar who craved for the knowledge just like Orochimaru. "Wait a minute, Orochimaru." She didn't. Hinata chuckled a cold, mirthless laugh that sent shivers up his spine and chilled him to the bone. She smirked at him like she knew what conclusion he had arrived at, and he gathered chakra for his techniques. If she truly was that serious, then he knew he was not going to survive the day, no matter who helped him or came in her way. She was known as the aka Nose-Sure for a reason, and he wished again that Naruto had not died by the traitorous fool Sasuke's hand that day. He swallowed at the look she leveled him with her Byakugan-enhanced eyes and swallowed the fear that appeared due her monstrous killing intent, Ki, washing over him. His guards had still not arrived, and he grew worried. "You know, Shikamaru, your guards won't come here. They have been indisposed for a small period of time. Now we talk and let us fulfill your curiosity about what I have been doing." She spoke, making him tremble at the pain he knew was coming. The reason was simple. Hinata was a gorgeous woman but a deadly ninja with a frozen heart that had been encased in ice due to the loss of Naruto. No one had been more affected than her, and everyone knew it. Now he managed to fit the puzzle that had been plaguing him since last 7 years. It was time for the truth to be released. Hinata made a single-hand seal, and Shikamaru froze in his place at the unexpected use of Fuinjutsu, and cursing to himself at being caught so easily. 2 shadow clones of Hinata appeared behind him and bound him up using ninja wire, and then delivered a series of jabs, making it impossible for him to move and mold chakra. She nodded to them and then walked up to him and whispered sweetly in his ear, making him tremble at her tone. "I have been making research to travel back in time and save my Naruto from his death. Now then, goodbye, Shikamaru, and I hope to see you again when we are children." Shikamaru's eyes had widened at the end of sentence, and he only had time to grunt in pain before Hinata struck him twice in his head and chest, knocking him out. She nodded to her clones, who took him to a secluded place before she activated her last phase of plan. Entering the underground lab of Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, she formed clones which went to destroy all traces of her experiments and the records of her final seal. As she stood in the middle of the massive sealing array, she looked heavenwards and spoke, "I am coming, Naruto-kun. Just wait for me." Flashing through the seals at a pace that even a Sharingan would find insane, she intoned softly when she completed her last hand seal, Uzumaki Kinjutsu, Gyaku Time Warp, Kinjutsu Reverse Time Warp, and in a flash of light she vanished to her past. Pale lavender eyes snapped open as a rush of memories and a tale worth of chakra poured into her body from the time stream. Her young body arched as her mind traveled to her mindscape. There she watched with wonder as a woman looking like an older version of her appeared in a whirl of crackling chakra, but what truly was going on with her she was not able to comprehend because she was too young. The young Hinata watched as the older woman smiled at her and spoke in a voice that was cold yet melodious. I want to help you, my dear Hinata. Tell me, do you desire power to protect yourself or your family? Answer me truthfully and I shall help you. Yes. I do want to be strong. Can you help me? What I must do? Asked a painfully shy and young Hinata to her older counterpart. Okay. Accept me as you and we will merge. My skills and knowledge will become yours, but some changes will be there that I must warn you about. Think carefully as we two will become as one. And let me tell you about myself and why I am here. Yes, I accept your proposition, replied an ecstatic Hinata after talking with her counterpart for a few hours. Unknown to both, this declaration had sealed the fate of one Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and his rise to prominence that would eclipse that of the Eni shinobi. A light erupted from the body of Hinata as both the old and young became one. Her body aged by a few months and unnoticeable to others including her clan members. Her chakra became more potent instead of increasing as the older counterpart had feared. Taking control of her new body, she got up and began meditating in order to accumulate her memories into her mind seamlessly, and using the mindscape techniques learned from one Ino Yamanaka she hid them from view of any mindwalkers and as a precaution, hid the entrance by making the mindscape more childlike. More she thought about her plan. She removed several plans due to the fact that Sandaime Hokage would catch on them, and not even including the Hyuga Council and the Village Civilian Council, that those stupid were very observant if it pertained anything to Naruto. Sorry Naruto-kun, it seems you have to suffer the village hatred for a few more years. Though they would teach you your morals and get rid of your naivety. Till then, I will try to get the samples for experiments that will make both of us stronger, thought Hinata while gazing at the moon and flaring her Byakugan periodically to get used to its strain, while doing stretches trying to get a feel for her body. Several extra plans and hidden gifts for her beloved were planned as she did not want him to be the same naive fool that had allowed others to walk over him and became the cause of his untimely death. Till then she would plan and plot while keeping eyes on the village that had no idea that a vengeful goddess was going to rain hell upon them. 4 years later, the last few years had not been very different for Hinata and by extension Naruto. Though for Sandaime Hokage, a puzzle had appeared and he had been no closer to solving it since the day that Kumo ambassador had been caught by a 3-year-old Hinata Hyuga who had been almost kidnapped by the same man, and had been almost sold to Kumo. Till this day no one knew what really happened, but the basic gist from what they had managed to recover from the man's damaged mind was that when he had entered the room to kidnap the sleeping Hyuga heiress, the girl was not asleep and sitting at the balcony gazing at the moon. Cursing his luck, the diplomat had tried to grab her before she raised any alarms, but there had been an explosion of uncontrolled chakra around the girl and she had leapt at him, while unleashing what seemed to be a hand covered in dense chakra strong enough to cut through metal. She had torn off half his face and an eye before the other Hyugas arrived and subdued the attacker. Sandaime himself had seen the face of the diplomat, and had managed to stop himself from wincing from the brutal mangling of the man's face. The girl had become cold and withdrawn after that day and seemed to look at the world with a frozen outlook that seemed to be on par with the Ice Queen of Konoha, one Kurenai Yuhi. She had not calmed down when the attacker had been subdued and had even attacked her own father using the same technique that had been dubbed by others as Haktamashi Tanken, 8 trigrams, Soul Dagger. Hayashi Hyuga had entered the room of her daughter immediately after hearing the cries of the Kumo diplomat, and tried to stop Hinata from further attacking the man. The girl had leapt at him with a mad look in her eyes and managed to score a palm slash across his face, giving him permanent scars in the form of 5 diagonal lines while thankfully not damaging his eyes. Hayashi had managed to knock the girl out, and save his dignity, or whatever had been left of it. Hiruzen himself had snickered at the annoyed look on the face of the Hyuga clan head when he had given his report. This had resulted in a cold war with Kumo due to their refusal to believe that the diplomat had been caught, and had practically demanded from Konoha that they hand over a main branch Hyuga, or in their words the person responsible for the attack on their honorable diplomat. Kumo had even the gall to threaten Konoha with war if their demands had not been met. Before, the Sandaime would have done anything to prevent the war, but one look at the girl's scared and dead-looking face and Sandaime had broken all talks and himself had went to Kuminari no Kuni with Danzo and Jiraiya and told the daimyo in no uncertain terms what he thought of Kumo and their demands. He even had challenged the Raikage with his bluff of war, and told him that Konoha was waiting. The Cold War situation had increased, and only since the last year when the new Raikage had taken office the tensions lessened if not vanished. Sandaime Hokage had also a different source of headache. One Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox, Kyuubi no Kitsune. He made a mistake in announcing the Council Minato's wish to see Naruto as a hero for keeping the Kyuubi at bay, but the people of Konoha, blinded by their anger and hatred, disregarded those wishes, and soon he was trying to keep Naruto at arm's length from people who would do harm to him. The decision of informing people backfired and Naruto became a social pariah in the village. People in their hatred and anger attacked the young boy, and soon the boy became a goofball and a socially inept child, making him a target due to his ignorance. Abandoned by those whom he could count on him to teach him something, Naruto was made to suffer untold cruelties and hardships. Kicked out from the orphanage at the tender age of 4, Naruto was found in by Hiruzen himself scrounging the trash for food full after a year of his abandonment, while he was going to visit Hinata Hyuga so as to check on her after the traumatizing incident. Hiruzen, appalled by the callousness of the people of his beloved village, had went into a towering rage whose effects were still felt by all, including the village council, especially by the civilian side and his advisors, including the warhawk, Danzo. He himself had broken the arms and legs of 7 drunks who had assaulted Naruto in front of him, while the boy had been eating from the trash. The poor boy had passed out from the ki exuded by the angry shinobi no Kami, and he had executed 3 of his ANBU, 7 Chunin and 2 Jounin publicly, who had falsified reports of Naruto's welfare and his finances as a warning to all. He had gotten the boy an apartment, and then sent one of the best ANBU, Tenzo and Nico, who were assigned to teach the boy social skills and techniques needed for his survival. He had also introduced Hinata to the boy in order to get him a friend in his age group. To his delight, both had become friends, even though Hayashi had first protested the decision, but seeing the cold, unfeeling Hinata smiling slightly in the boy's presence had forced him to reconsider his decision. The people of Konoha had been warned by the Sandaime, had taken to ignore the boy silently, but they had never untreated him badly or glared at him due to the fear of Sandaime, who had tightened the reins over the village, getting grudging respect from his rival Danzo. Both Naruto and Hinata had decided to fast track from the Ninja Academy, taking only a course of 3 years instead of the standard 5 years, but they had put the condition that they would start the academy when they were 10 years old so that they may get to know the children their age and not be put on same teams so as to prevent the Sandaime to be showing favoritism to them until they had no choice but to be paired together. Sarutobi Hiruzen was an old man and a veteran of 3 shinobi wars, but he did not know that he had been manipulated by a girl who had only one thing in her mind, a certain blonde-haired boy whom she had already decided to spend her entire life and make sure he lived to a ripe old age unlike his previous one. Hinata's perspective. The day had come for Hinata, who had waited and trained for this day and carefully manipulated her plans since the day she had arrived in the past. She had trained rigorously and brutally, such that even her father had asked her to lay off training for a while so that she would not damage her body. Also, the cold, unfeeling persona had worked wonders in making her the entire Hyuga Council nervous as hell around her so that she would get no chance to damage them like she had done to the Kumo diplomat and her father. Hinata had, in order to put her act more solid and to take the heat of her, had decided to take the route of getting traumatized, even though she had not anticipated the effects her actions had on the world politics. She had also made trips to the root headquarters using the seals remembered by her, engraved on her clothes, and had even raided the Orochimaru labs in the village. Her quest to get the DNA of first Hokage and Madara Uchiha had gone off successfully, but she had been unable to get the DNA of Kushina Uzumaki and Mito Uzumaki, as their crypts needed the blood of a Uzumaki along with freshly given blood willingly so as to open them. Her plan of getting Naruto attention from Sandaime had taken a while, but she had managed done so after careful planning and concentration. All she had to was to cast a small genjutsu on Naruto that made him wander the alley she knew Sandaime frequented, from asking him to get her cinnamon buns that were available from only one shop in Konoha, and it was even more easy to get those drunks to beat up her beloved. But no true gain comes without pain, she reasoned to herself. She had under a henge gotten them to drink a lot, and then gotten them to lie in wait for Naruto, and egged them till they were literally seeing red. She had winced when one of them had smashed a bottle on his head, and another had used a pipe to bash him in the ribs, but Sandaime had responded immediately, and she had shed several tears that night at her actions, but then told herself to suck up. The bonding had made her emotional balance out of whack, and she needed to reach the teen age to be a true master of her emotions. Getting Sandaime to meet Naruto had been easy, as she had mentioned the incident to him, and even commented that the boy was like her. The Hokage had been overeager to get them to meet so as get Hinata a hold on her sanity, and in the process, Naruto a friend. The old man's guilt made him easy to manipulate. Sentimental old fool. His actions had nearly divided the village into numerous factions before he had gotten it all under control. Then it was easy to get Naruto to open up to her. All she had to do was to make him shed away the mask, and he bared himself to her. That day she decided that she would never break his trust. She got him several books on psychology, etiquette, calligraphy, human anatomy, emotional control, politics, and history. The Sandaime had issued him an apartment in the shinobi district near her caretaker's apartment of one Kurenai Yehi. He had also gotten security seals engraved so as not to take chances. To make Naruto read those books had been easy. All she had to was to make him understand that they were necessary for a Hokage to know such things truly, and he had been hooked into them. Also she studied with him, and then subtly pushing him towards books that were needed for a shinobi, and she had then introduced him to Mito Gai, the taijutsu master of Konoha. Before leaving him in the Jounin's care, she had taken him aside and threatened him with making him an eunuch if he turned her beloved Naruto into his mini-clone. The man had shivered at the mad look in her eyes before she had managed to rein in her ki so as not to make anyone suspicious. Say whatever you want to about Mito Gai, but he was one clever ninja if one managed to overlook his eccentricity and weird fashion sense. The most difficult and mind-numbing task that Hinata found she had to undertake was to break that stupidity and naivete out of Naruto, who believed that ninjas were a group of cool people who saved princesses, defeated bad guys, helped the poor, and all that rot. This thinking had led him into an early death, and she would be damned if she allowed him to develop that attitude again. And boy, wasn't that hard. The first task she had done was to give him the rabbit test. He had blinked cutely at her when she had given him a rabbit as a pet, and asked him to care for it for 6 months. At the end of his time, she had given him a knife and told him to kill the rabbit. Poor Naruto had cried and whined and tried every single thing his 7-year-old brain had managed to come to stop the killing. She had gotten very frustrated in order to make him understand what being a ninja entailed, and giving him several of those tests had managed to break his naive and childish persona while exposing him to the dark truths of the world. He had gone into shock when he had killed the rabbit, and it took him 3 weeks to get rid of his fears and shaking. Hinata had in clear words told him what was going to happen to him if he allowed himself to be delusional to the truth of the world, and even though it was cruel of her to say as such, she made him remember what the villagers had done to him when he was younger. The Naruto that emerged from that talk was a serious one, and had cold looks similar to what Hinata had cultivated. Both of them understood, especially Naruto, who had been made to read several journals of ninja including 1st and 2nd Hokage. Naruto had learned several things, and Hinata had made sure he had lost his exuberance, inability to stand in one place, and his hyperactivity. She had introduced him to meditation to calm him, and shogi to sharpen his mind. Also, she had gotten him books on strategy and tactics. All in all, Hinata in the period of 4 years had changed one Naruto Uzumaki into a boy fit to be called a leader of a clan with a very sharp mind and several ninja skills with extremely good basics. In all, it was what she wanted, but now she wanted Naruto to know about his heritage, and that entailed a trip to the ravaged grounds of Yuzo no Kuni and Yuzushiogakure. But even Sandaime would know if Naruto simply disappeared for a year. She needed to persuade him when she remembered the letter from one Uzumaki Senju Mito to her great-grandfather. Smiling devilishly to herself, she went to her room while her mind began to plot for the upcoming meeting with the Sandaime Hokage next afternoon. 9 years after the Kyuubi attack, 2 children, a boy and a girl, were seen walking hand in hand with each other while the civilians along the road moved aside to give them space as several ninjas walking the road and rooftops gave them solemn nods of respect. The children themselves looked very beautiful, and according to several young mothers and ladies who cooed to themselves seeing such a nice couple at such small age, they were like a kami blessed couple. These were no ordinary children. One of them was Hinata Hyuga, heiress of the Hyuga clan and famous in the village as the Ice Maiden of Hyuga, and the other was Naruto Uzumaki, resident Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and unknown to him, a Namikaze and son of Yondaime Hokage and Uzumaki Kushina of the royal house of Yuzushiogakure. Both were wearing matching clothes from the warring clans era. The girl wore an elaborate, high-collared crimson-red kimono with the Hyuga symbol on the back of the obi, which was tied around her waist, and black sandals. Her blue hair reached up to her mid-back and her lavender orbs looked at the world with cold and calculating manner. The boy was wearing black leather NBU-style clothes which melded to his body like a second skin, showcasing his entire body and showcasing a powerful and tall torso built for speed and grace. Above his clothes was a bluish-silver plate armor worn by shinobi of old era and had a crimson-red Uzumaki swirl on the back showing his allegiance to the feared Uzumaki clan. His face was covered by a crimson-colored face mask, leaving only his cold ice-blue eyes and upper part of his face visible. He had long blonde hair which was spiky and wild, giving him the look of a noble. Both of them looked part of dangerous shinobi, and cut through the civilians as they drew closer. As they reached the end of the road, a massive building was seen that functioned as the Hokage Tower. Both of them entered the building and traversed the building, moving up the floors as they walked hand in hand. Reaching the highest level, they entered the office after asking the secretary if the Hokage was free. Seeing the famous ice duo of Konoha in front of her caused the secretary no discomfort, as she was already used to their presence, and she smiled at them when they entered the office, returning her smile with one of their own. Entering the office, they were greeted to the sight of Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was sitting behind the desk wearing the Fire Kage robes and smoking his favorite pipe while looking out of the window towards the Hokage mountain, which contained the faces of the previous Kages and his late successor the Yondaime Hokage, who was lost his life while sealing the Kyuubi and his son. Turning towards them with his grandfatherly smile, he nodded to them to be seated, and he himself made himself comfortable, and then spoke. "Good morning to you too. How are you on this fine day, Hinata-hime and Naruto-kun? What can this old man do for you? I hope you have no problems with the civilians?" "No, Hokage-sama. It is nothing like that, and though we are in good health, however, we would like to discuss something with you. But before that, I would like to personally thank you for helping us till now, and we both are incredibly grateful for that. Right, Hinata-hime?" replied Naruto, while Hinata simply nodded with a smile on their face. Before he had met Hinata, Naruto had a really brash and outgoing personality. But she had nearly beaten those out of him using her stubbornness and simple hard work. Even though he still called the Hokage as Gigi, an old man, due to the fact that the Hokage really acted as the surrogate grandfather. Sarutobi Hiruzen himself had seen the effects of the company of Hinata on Naruto. The young brash boy had become tempered and more social able, while his intelligence increased and hyperactivity was reined in. She was really good for her, and though it appeared on the surface that Hinata had affected the boy more, but the fact was Hinata herself had become more outgoing and expressive than what she was before the incident. It had been really a good decision to introduce them to each other, and it made him happy that he had saved 2 souls while keeping his interference to the minimum. "Okay then. The office is secure. What do you both want to talk to me about? He asked, making a hidden signal with his free hand discreetly that made all the ANBU in his office leave the room but were kept on high alert. Hinata shook her head while flashing her Byakugan and pointed towards a particularly dark corner on the room's ceiling while palming her saban in her other hand and saying, "It seems that there is still one." As soon as the words were out of her mouth, she had leapt to avoid a hail of kunai at her which were embedded in the chair. The Sandaime had leapt across the room towards the assailant, while the other ANBU had attacked the intruder, while keeping the children safe. After a few minutes of tussle, the young, unassuming shinobi had been captured and tied, but before he could even twitch, he had a seal slapped across his chest which locked his chakra and movements. "Take this shinobi to the ANBU cells and keep watch over him. And save myself. No one, including the elders or ANBU, are to approach him. Those who do are to be captured and brought immediately before me. Otherwise get ready to be executed for treason," barked a seriously angry-looking Hokage, causing the jaws to drop and eyes to widen from everyone. He looked back where Hinata and Naruto were being kept by the other ANBU and raised his own eyebrow at their calm and collected faces. Maybe the relationship had more effect on their childish mentality and innocence than he first believed. After the intruder had been taken away, and he himself had used a sealing technique to cast a cone of silence, he turned towards the children while noticing them both stowing away the sanban they had in their hands while they were walking towards the chairs, causing him no small amount of regret seeing the young children act more like veteran shinobi. "This office is now secure, so what was that you two had to discuss before this fiasco? I hope what happened a few minutes before is not mentioned to the others because it is a village secret. I hope you understand?" he asked, receiving two nods from both of them. "Lord Hokage, we both have come to talk about a woman named Mito Uzumaki Senju and this letter that she wrote to my great-grandfather, which in essentially is a marriage contract between the clans and a treaty for support of one clan to another during hardships. But since the letter was misplaced whether intentionally or not and my great-grandfather died soon after, caused the terms to be postponed to next generation as agreed upon by both the parties. We both did our research and found out that Naruto-kun is a true Uzumaki and his mother is no one else than Uzumaki Kushina, also known the S-ranked ninja of this village called as aka No Sure or the Crimson Death. But the letter also states that the couple that is supposed to marry is supposed to go towards the Yuzo no Kuni for receiving a special inheritance. Also the other terms and conditions are in the letter which you are no doubt reading right now. But first we want to know, why did you hide the truth from Naruto about his parents, and why the history of Uzumaki clan and their roles in the foundation of Konoha forgotten and not taught to children in the academy? All my friends and other children tell that the non-existent Uchiha clan is praised for many things and the other clans are glossed over or just not told enough. Has the memory of this village has gotten that bad that they would leave out a cousin clan of the Senju clan out of history, or the fact that they were our allies and not the least the reason of spiral in the leaf and on the back of our jackets has been forgotten? Maybe I should talk to the other clans, as this village which can forget the relatives of the founders of the same village will not take long to forget us too, no matter what we do, and how much blood we may shed for this village. Is this how we take care of our culture and our history, Lord Hokage? Answer me this, or maybe act more like you ought to, Lord Hokage, for I cannot see how much hypocritical we all are acting. By your leave then, and please have a nice day," spoke Hinata while showing how much she was affected by the discovery of such a secret. Sarutobi Hiruzen, when he had awoken this morning, had hoped that he would have a very non-eventful day. But this morning and day was turning out anything but normal. First, he was surprised to see both the ice duo of Konoha in his office and what he had recognized as the shinobi clothes from the Warring Clan era, especially the design which was that of the Senju clan. He had both seen preference of Naruto and Hinata both, and he had wondered the day that if it was a quirk or something from his genetics, as his Uzumaki ancestors preferred the traditional clothes, like Lady Mito and Kushina used to do. When the girl had spoken about the intruder, he had been stumped as to how a girl only 9 years old could penetrate an exceptionally well done ranked genjutsu which he himself had not noticed due to his old age and complicity that he allowed himself to be lulled in after the Kyuubi attack. His decisions lacked his methodical touch, and he had allowed too much power in the hands of his former teammates and Danzo, which made them arrogant and hard to control. But what sent his rage into a true inferno was the fact that the civilian council had the gall to remove such an important part of the village's history, and he inferred that his teammates and rival had not done anything to save that part of their history. Hashirama-sensei and Tobirama-sensei would flay him and the whole village alive if they knew the village had spit on its former allies. And the less said about Mito-sama, more better for anyone. That woman scared the hell out of both the first Hokage and his rival Madara Uchiha. The less known fact was that Lady Mito, though being a very kind and caring person, was really a terrifying taskmaster, and her mind cooked up new ideas on using Fuinjutsu that was frightening in its application. The loss of Madara Uchiha to Hashirama Senju was due to the fact that the Lady Mito had been helping him to neutralize the assaults of the Manjikyu Sharingan, and had even subdued the Kyuubi with a seal. Hiruzen remembered the day when Lady Mito had been asked to train them when Tobirama-sensei had been busy for doing to them the lessons that had been beaten into them so thoroughly when both Danzo and Koharu had mouthed off to her and called her an old hag still sent shivers of dread through them due to their effectiveness and brutality. Sarutobi had spent the next 2 weeks in hospital, and he was the least beaten out of all of them. Hamura often had complained later in his life that his arms still felt off till this day. Sarutobi Hiruzen felt that it might be better for him to take care of the stupidity of the civilians, and his teammates lest Lady Mito go after him in his afterlife. But before that he had to deal with the new headache that appeared due to the letter he was reading. This letter had opened a can of worms for him and the Uzumaki and Hyuga clans. This letter also had been sent to the daimyo of Hai no Kuni of that time and the ruler of Iron Country as a record for both the clans, and it involved a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo. But the basic gist of the letter and contract could be written down as the following points. 1. The heirs of the Hyuga clan and the Uzumaki clan could not be forced into the marriage, nor they could be persuaded to break it. Doing so would result in the breach of contract and the loss of honor for the clan, doing so by the offending clan being declared as the oath breakers. 2. If the Hyuga clan uses the caged bird seal on the marrying party, then it would give the ruling daimyo the right to interfere, and the Hyuga clan will be forever marked as traitors to the shinobi and clan code of Hai no Kuni. Similar conditions apply for the Uzumaki clan, as they are forbidden to perform any seals on the marrying party under the same penalty and punishment. Any mind-altering seals are strictly forbidden, and the applying person or clan can be punished under the authority of Iron Country and its ruler. 3. All the grievances, if any, are to be resolved under the joint ruling of Hai no Kuni and the Iron Country. 4. The above terms are not negotiable and cannot be overturned under the blood oath of the respective clan leaders. The Sandaime simply huffed to himself, and then looked again at the letter with a careful eye while ignoring the terms about return of money and all that terms in case the contract was not fulfilled for the next 10 generations. He took out a sake bao from Kumo he had kept for such reasons, and then downed a healthy gulp of the potent liquid and relished the buzz of sake while contemplating the oncoming headache when the daimyo and Lord Mifune from Iron Country arrived to see whether the terms of the contract were fulfilled when the children reached the age of 11. Sarutobi was mentally exhausted at this point. Hinata and Naruto had let on just one startling revelation after the next. Thinking about the blonde boy, he felt a sense of shame when he remembered the boy eating from trash and living in filth in the red light district before he had been shifted to the shinobi apartments. Sighing to himself, he seemed to be doing that a lot. He told his ANBU to summon Danzo at once. It was time to rein the Warhawk before he did something damaging to Konoha in his zeal to act more in the interests of Konoha. Hinata and Naruto were now in his apartment, while Kurenai Yuhi was with them. Kurenai had decided to teach both of them the fine art of genjutsu due to the fact that Hinata herself had asked her to teach her speciality, and the reason she wanted Naruto to have perfect control over his chakra reserves due to the fact that he had massive reserves due his heritage as an Uzumaki, but also due to the fact he had a biju sealed in him. Kurenai felt that she had to teach Naruto due to the fact that she knew Kushina Uzumaki and felt that she owed it to her that she teach it to her son the fine arts of genjutsu as Kushina had taught her kenjutsu. Get ready, Naruto-san. I am going to introduce you to the practice of Saban balancing. I know you have already mastered that step, but still your chakra control is just at the level of a jounin. But these Saban are special and made from a special metal that needs a specified amount of chakra needed to lift them upwards. They were given to me by a very special kunoichi, your mother. She added special seals to the Saban that helped in chakra control for me. She wanted me to reach my potential and encouraged me by giving me tips. I want to give it to them, for they are a part of your legacy. So do you like them? She asked while keeping her emotions in check at how adorable he looked when he was not employing his poker face. Really, Kurenai-san, were these Saban given to you by my mother? When she nodded with a small smile gracing her face, he continued. Then I am grateful for you two for helping me. I will strive for you to feel proud of me, for I shall strive to get better at genjutsu even though my chakra reserves are massive, nor shall I forget your instructions. He finished by giving her a heartfelt bow. Hinata, who was watching the entire scene, felt giddy that someone was taking good care even though she had to pull up some strings and do some manipulations. Today also she decided that her plans regarding Danzo should be brought into play due to fact that he had been making his root shinobi follow her and spy on their training sessions. She knew she had to curtail his influence, or make Sandaime more alert regarding his actions, or she would not be able to stop him from making his bids for power. Danzo and his warmongering policies were not needed for Konoha, as he would definitely try to attack Naruto so as to make him his weapon, that she would never allow or even remotely allow to pass. Hell would pass over before she would allow her Naruto-kun to be turned into a drone for the Warhawk. Also, next week she would try to talk Sandaime, or maybe guilt him into the trip for Yuzo. That needed to be done, for she had to test Edo Tensei on Hashirama, Madara and Mito Uzumaki. She also needed for Naruto to take care of the Uzumaki sealing crypts for her to get DNA of the Uzumakis. Maybe she could get some summons for herself till then. The archives of Hyuga clan had a number of hidden secrets and taijutsu styles that rarely someone practiced. She could find something there. It had been a week since that fateful morning, and Sarutobi Hiruzen was already at his wits' end on how to deal with the issue of training trip that Hinata Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki had requested that two in the far reaches of Yuzo no Kuni. However, he couldn't refuse them, as the letter clearly stated that a part of their inheritance was situated in that ravaged country, and since the island was deserted after the destruction of Uzumaki clan, as no one had managed to move through the whirlpools that surrounded the island. Kiri had itself lost several thousand of its invading force when they had managed to stop the whirlpools temporarily, but all the shinobi who had a hand in the jutsu had died due to the chakra exhaustion. He was worried due to the fact that these whirlpools would not recognize Naruto as the heir to the Uzumaki, as he was only half-blooded due to his father being a Namikaze. But going on his faith, he simply decided to send Yuhi Kurenai and Anko Mitarashi along with them on the 2-year-old training trip, as they both would help them, and Kurenai had strong bonds with both Hinata and Naruto, and Anko had already been on the hit list of Danzo due to the fact that he still did not trust her after Orochimaru had abandoned her. The stigma of being associated with a traitor still followed Anko, and she was already being secluded by many civilians and few shinobi. This allowed him to take care of 2 problems at once. It gave him an in with both Naruto and Hinata, while it gave Anko the much-needed closure she needed. When both the children entered, he smiled at them while asking his ANBU to get Anko and Kurenai. At the deadpan looks both gave him, he chuckled while internally marveling at the perceptions shared by both of the prodigies. Yes, they were prodigies, as he kept watch over them and their secret training using his crystal ball. When both the women entered, with Anko being her usual boisterous self and Kurenai in her Ice Queen mode, he spoke. Hinata-san and Naruto-kun, they both are going to accompany both of you to Yuzo no Kuni and will assist you in your training. I have faith in both of them and hope when you come back, you would be even better than you are now. Naruto-kun, I am sorry about the fact that the council and my teammates went behind my back and tried to erase the role of your clan in the village. I have taken steps to ensure it does not happen for any clan. I hope you do forgive me. It is not your fault, Gigi. Though I would be more concerned at the fact how easily the elders and the council jumped at the chance to become hypocrites. I hope when we return, things and situations will be different. You are a Hokage, so you must be strong and vigilant. That old mummy Danzo gives me the creeps, especially his covered eye. I always sense some kind of foul and twisted chakra from that eye. I hope you can see what tingles my senses whenever I pass by him, answered Naruto, while making Sarutobi and Anko surprised at the ability to sense chakra and its differences. Hinata and Kurenai both knew his ability to sense anyone's mood slightly from the chakra when one was actively using it. But Hinata had asked him to use it actively when they found that if one was suppressing one's chakra, and tested it on Danzo, and Naruto had been disturbed by the feel of chakra and told both of them about his findings. Naruto did not know that Hinata had asked him to do so because she had known from her memories that Kyuubi could sense the Manjikyu Sharingan with ease due to the fact it was a corrupted form of chakra and twisted one's mind who was unable to resist its effects. Madara Uchiha had fallen prey to its maddening effects long before he attacked Konoha. It had made sense in a twisted sort of way due to the fact that Sasuke had also shown increase in his madness after he gained the Manjikyu after killing his brother. Itachi, who himself told Hinata that he felt a sort of burning sensation in his eyes whenever he used his Manjikyu when she had summoned him using Edo Tensei. Hinata had concluded that Manjikyu Sharingan damaged one's psyche and sanity over the period of prolonged use, for the people with emotions such as greed, anger, and madness in them. That explained how Itachi and Kakashi showed no signs of damage even after using Manjikyu for long periods, as both of them had good control over their emotions. Hinata shook herself mentally and looked back at the Sandaime Hokage as he gave them the signed documents that allowed them permission to leave Hai no Kuni. Also, he asked that they give him monthly reports so that he may share them with Hinata's father, Hayashi, who had jumped at the chance of getting Hinata away from the clan as she had attacked another main branch elder who had insulted both Naruto and Hinata's mother when Naruto had been visiting them last week. The elder had barely survived the match as Hinata had clearly broken his ribs and arms while shattering his left leg. According to the doctors, the elder would now always walk with a limp, and this incident had raised the tensions in the Hyuga household. Hayashi, in a bid to settle those tensions, had gladly agreed that it would be better for Hinata to leave the village for a trip. The emergence of the old letter had raised some serious hackles for Hayashi, but the terms and the fact that both the rulers of Iron Country and Hai no Kuni were involved and knew about the alliance had made him ready to faint. The terms and conditions in the letter were harsh, and if the Hyuga clan broke even one term, there would be hell to pay, and the disgrace that would come would be even more devastating. Hayashi had known for a while that Hinata had chosen Naruto as her husband and a potential suitor. Even though his hands had been tied till she reached 12, Hayashi had approved of Minato's son as they were close friends in the academy. He did not tell the Hyuga elders and council about the letter as many were vocal detractors against Naruto and wanted them no chance to prepare for the shitstorm that would follow when the news would get released. 2 days later, Hinata and Naruto were standing at the gate waiting for both their companions, Anko and Kurenai, to arrive so that they may go on their trip. They are dressed as always in their traditional shinobi-era clothes. Hinata in her kimono and Naruto in his armor. Only thing they both had added was a large sealing scroll slung on both their backs. They had already been half an hour late, and Hinata was already feeling that this was all Anko's fault. On the other side of village in Anko's apartment, Anko and Kurenai were rushing about packing their things in the sealing scrolls and putting their clothes on when Anko suddenly sneezed. Damn, I hope no one is talking about me, especially the brats, for I do not want them to think I am like Kakashi. She pulled her trench coat over her mesh shirt and then looked towards Kurenai, who looked a bit angry. Scratch that, very angry. Anko, you and your impromptu parties. I did not want our impression to be this bad, especially when we are going to spend nearly 2 years with them. I don't know what they must be thinking right now. You ready? Then let's go. And they both vanished in a shunshin and appeared in front of their 2 charges. I'm sorry. We were late because spoke Kurenai while adjusting her bandages on her chest area, giving all nearby males nosebleeds. She was wearing her bandage dress with a crimson-red blouse wrapped in bandages. She had long, curly black hair and cherry-red lipstick. She showed enough skin to tell all that she knew exactly what type of effect her appearance had on people, or men rather, and that she was willing to take advantage of it where she could, a pragmatic woman. She also seemed to favor the color red. Shades of crimson and scarlet were present beneath her bandages, most prominently displayed on the sleeve of her left arm. Enko was wearing her usual clothes that consisted of a mesh bodysuit and a short orange skirt that reached only to her mid-thighs. Her usual trench coat was open, giving everyone a very nice view of her chest and her perky DD-sized melons that looked extremely bouncy. Her purple hair was in a ponytail as usual, and she was wearing gray arm and shin guards alongside her clothing. Her headband was on her forehead, and she was currently eating a dango stick and gave them both a half-hearted wave before going back to her breakfast. You were lost on the road of life, spoke Naruto, getting raised eyebrows from everyone. I thought that someone was emulating Kakashi. Only thing left was if they were lazy as hell and 2.5 hours more late. He replied, getting a sigh from Kurenai while looking over both their appearances, especially the large scrolls. So they know Fuinjutsu. She made a note to herself. Let's move out. We all can talk on the way, she said while they all moved out. After getting the documents signed at the gate, they jumped into Tress and began their journey while Enko looked surprised at their grasp of tree jumping. That was at least a genin level skill in her eyes. Maybe this mission won't be boring at all, she thought to herself while scanning the area for hostiles. After reaching a respectable distance, Enko spoke. What will you both brats would be learning from us? I mean, Lord Third gave us no specific instructions or orders for both of you, and I just want to know why. He also seemed to think that you two had a plan for this training trip of yours. You will need not to teach us, as we are going to have a 3 or maybe 4 teachers if we are lucky when we reach Yuzu. You both can leave us alone on the island and we will not be in your hair for 2 years. You can go on a vacation. It looks like you need one, spoke Hinata, getting Enko's and Kurenai's interest in who would be teaching them. What do you mean by that? No one lives in Yuzu ever since the Second Shinobi War, when it was destroyed. We will not leave you, and even if someone is there, we would both like to meet them first, spoke Kurenai while Enko nodded along. Naruto looked at Hinata and sighed when she nodded and spoke quietly but firmly. Okay, but you two have to swear on your life, honor and headband that you will not share this knowledge with anyone, even with the Hokage, until we say so. If someone knew what we are doing and whom we are going to learn from, it will be problematic for us, as it is a clan secret of the Uzumakis and Senjus. And as an incentive, you can learn from them. Those people are legends, and you will be surprised at what we know. He finished, getting raised eyebrows from both their babysitters. Both of them looked fairly indecisive, but then Hinata spoke. We can wait until we reach the shores of the sea. Till then you can decide over it, and then tell us. After 1.5 days of travel they reached the shores of the sea. Both Kurenai and Enko were surprised at the stamina that Hinata showed, due to the fact that they stopped only twice the entire time, once for a break and other for night's sleep. Though they suspected that due to the Kyuubi being sealed in Naruto, he had massive chakra reserves that gave him almost Jounin to ANBU level stamina. Seeing the question in both their eyes, she shrugged and said, I train with Naruto-kun every day. And he always outlasts me. I have been training to increase me reserves and control long before I even met him, after reading in Hyuga library about how an excellent kunoichi should have better reserves and good chakra control. Enough about me. What is your decision? Are you with us or not? We have to hurry up, for we have to reach Yuzu before the night truly starts. Both of the kunoichi looked towards each other, and with a slow nod Kurenai spoke. Okay then. We are with you on this, but remember, if we find something dangerous, we will bring both of you back regardless of your feelings for this. At this both spoke as one. We both swear on our life, honor and our headbands that we will never reveal what you will show us, nor the identity of your teachers until you say so. Okay. Let's get to Yuzu. And here is an incentive for your friend Enko-san, Kurenai-sensei. If we are lucky we might get that curse seal removed from her, spoke Hinata, getting the eyes of both women to widen in shock. Naruto was standing on top of a boat he had rented with others, looking at the ruins of the country his mother came from. In front of him were the whirlpools that had protected the island until its fall, threatening to suck everything into them as soon as they approached. His icy blue eyes watched the island and swirling waters with a steely gaze, the boat rocking with the tide, yet staying anchored in place. He stepped out of the boat, a knife ready in his hand. He started walking towards the ruined island, the steel never leaving his eyes. When he got to the whirlpools he cut his palm, letting the blood fall into the water. Before anyone could speak, Naruto cried out, "This will last till I am on the water. Cross quickly and we will talk later." At his insistent voice, all 3 of them moved out and began crossing the ocean that was calm now. The whirlpools had contracted some, allowing him and the others to pass between them. When he was a safe distance towards land, the swirling waters widened again, closing everyone from leaving. If one were to look at the island of Yuzo-no-Kuni from the sky, they would see a forest covering the outer parts of the island, with gray and brown being predominant towards the center, and a river crossing the island through the middle. The part where Naruto and others had landed was near the mouth of the river, which led, much like in Konoha, to the main village. His ears were twitching every second at the sound of wildlife: boars, deer, wolves, even the occasional rabbit and fox. As soon as they all were on the Yuzo-no-Kuni, and Naruto stepped off the water, the whirlpool began again. Naruto dropped to his knees and all of them rushed towards him. I am alright. The stopping of whirlpools took a massive chakra from me and I feel I have only 25 to 30% chakra left in me. Now I know how those Kirin died when they echoed Yuzu. The whirlpools are made due to seals engraved on the sea floor. Only the freely given blood of an Uzumaki with its saturated chakra will allow safe passage. The jutsu used on the whirlpools may have slowed the speed of the whirlpool, but the chakra cost was abnormally high. Those ninjas died from the fact that every single drop of chakra was sucked from them. As they neared the village, he closed his eyes and climbed over one of the few standing walls, waiting until he was at the top to open them. The sight that greeted him and others was not pleasant at all. Building reduced to nothing more than rubble, pillars leaning to the side, roofs cave-in, corpses of Kumo, Kiri and Iwa lying on the outer rings of the city, corpses of his kinsmen near the center, where a Hokage tower could be seen, but it too was semi-destroyed, having only the 2 bottom floors. Naruto felt a great amount of sadness seeing the state of his homeland even though he was never born here. Hinata gripped his hand in a show of support, and even Kurenai and Enko had tears in their eyes seeing the grim scene. With a muted pop, nearly 30 Kage Bunshin popped, each one having the same cold eyes as the original. They needed no instruction and moved quickly and efficiently through the destroyed village where they began gathering the bodies of Naruto's deceased clansmen so that they could be burned and their ashes buried in a mass grave. Enko and Kurenai themselves made 3 Kage Bunshin each so as to assist them in their grim work. The bodies of other ninjas were gathered so as to burn them and scatter their ashes. Few Kage Bunshin moved through the village and they scouted out few less damaged or still standing structures and also make them a campsite for the night, so that they would get some rest. Seeing the destruction was very heavy on Naruto, who was already suffering from chakra loss and then emotional loss from seeing his dead kin. After a few hours during which Hinata did not leave his side, Naruto and his clones made a camp near the open square a few distance away from the fallen Kage Tower. They all ate in silence and then went to sleep so as to get up in the morning early to begin their day. Hinata and Naruto shared a tent together, and so did Enko and Kurenai. They went to sleep together, thinking about the morbid and grim side they had seen together with a heavy mind and heart. Sleep came to each one late in the night, and their dreams were uneasy for more secrets were to be revealed tomorrow. The next morning, Enko woke to the heavenly smell of cooking breakfast, and she stretched herself while forgetting the fact where she was right now. Her action caused her bedmate, Kurenai, to be awoken rudely from a very nice dream in which she has getting on a date with a very hot man. A very cranky Kurenai awoke to the sight of an almost nude Enko and her tits, which were restrained only by a very transparent and lacy-looking purple bra. Her eyes followed their movement as her tits bounced with every movement she made. Enko stood up, giving Kurenai another view of her fantastic and toned body. Her pert and round bulging-ass cheeks were snugly wrapped around her matching purple G-string of her mini-thong, telling Kurenai that her friend preferred to sleep almost in the nude. Kurenai forced her eyes away from the luscious sight, while swallowing the lump that had appeared in her throat. Though she had a more curvy and lush body, Enko had a grace and sway in her movements that drew one's eye towards her. It was really nice sleeping with you, Kurenai. Never took you for a cuddle person though. It was very interesting. Now let's get up and have the breakfast. Enko spoke when she had gained back her mental faculties, and even though she noticed Kurenai ogling her, she did not mind, for she took pride in her body and had worked hard to get such a nice and sensual body. Kurenai blushed, and after controlling her hormones she gathered her day clothes while shedding her nightgown. Enko also wore her normal ensemble, and they both got out of the tent they had shared last night, to the sight of Naruto and Hinata cooking breakfast over a small fire. Seeing both of them, they smiled and nodded towards them and began pouring out stew and bread, along with a cup of tea. After the breakfast had been done, they packed their camp and began moving towards the center of the square where Hinata and Naruto had already made preparations for Edo Tensei. Well, more like the fact that Hinata knew while Naruto only helped in preparing the kanji for the kinjutsu. Naruto had already been told about the plan few weeks before, and he was excited at learning from such legendary figures and his Uzumaki ancestor, Lady Mito herself. Hinata had gotten 3 live sacrifices and using stasis seals kept them in the scroll. Just now she was only using 3 sacrifices while keeping the other 2 bodies for other resurrections. The persons she had kidnapped were the most vile and filthy people, for they all were criminals, and though they were civilians, each one of them was responsible for several rapes, killings and crimes in the red light district. Hinata had simply used genjutsu and a potent sleeping gas on them to knock them out, and then sealed them after applying the restriction and stasis seals on them. Kurenai and Enko saw a massive array on the ground in which 3 coffins were lying, each marked with the kanji of first, second, and the last one had the kanji for sealing on it. This technique is a kinjutsu, and uses massive chakra and knowledge to be able to use perfectly. Since you are here, let's get started for we are wasting our time, spoke Hinata, while Naruto simply stood beside her and began pumping his chakra into her. Both the kunoichi saw as the young girl went through more than 100 hand seals at a pace that was fast for a person of her age group and in the end cried out, Kinjustu, Edo Tensei, while chakra poured out from her, and the kanji glowed. The 3 coffins rattled as a fine dust or ash-like gray substance poured into the coffins, and then everything was silent as a graveyard. Slowly the coffins opened outwards and the figures that were inside them stepped out, causing both the kunoichi felt their eyes widen at the 2 of figures standing in front of them. They did not know who the woman was, but her look was as intimidating as anyone you would have ever seen. They are you? What? How did you? Hinata stuttered Kurenai, while Anko seemed to have gone stiff with shock at the legends standing in front of them. Meet the ones who are all-knowing, powerful, and if they accept, then our teachers. Meet the Shodame and Naidame Hokage, along with Lady Mito, wife of Senju Hashirama, spoke Hinata in a cold and powerful voice, while Naruto seemed to have fixed his eyes on Lady Mito and seemed to be lost in thought. Konoha, Hokage Tower, Danzo, Hamura and Koharu were all standing in front of the Sarutobi Hiruzen, and each one seemed to be tense as hell. In fact, the tension was so thick that it could be cut with a chakra-enhanced kunai. The third Hokage seemed to be extremely calm, but they had spent years with each other, and knew his body language well enough to know that Sarutobi was anything but calm. The atmosphere was the same as the day Sarutobi had found Naruto eating from trash cans outside the shops while going to visit Hinata. The look in the eyes of Sarutobi was practically the same if one ignored the calm and almost relaxed look that he was projecting. Danzo knew something had happened, and it was something big. His root shinobi that he had sent to spy on the Jinchuriki and Hyuga heiress had reported that they had left the village with Jounin Kurenai Yuhi and Special Jounin Anko Mitarashi. He had cursed the fact that Hiruzen had allowed and unsealed Byakugan and the Jinchuriki of the Kitsune no Kyubi outside where they may be kidnapped by any other hidden village. But before he could ponder further on the news, he had gotten summons from the ANBU that Hokage had summoned him as soon as he arrived in the village. And now he was here waiting for Hiruzen to make a move so that he could ask about the decisions he had taken. You know, it has been a very long time since we have been together. I may say it was for some good reason, but I can't say it was for that. Gunma, your squad is needed now, he roared. 5 ANBU arrived in the room, and 3 of them directly behind the elders, and each of them felt the cool length of ANBU's ninjatos resting with their tips poised a hair's breadth from each of their necks and crackling with tightly leashed chakras poised to end their lives in an instant. What is the meaning of this, Hiruzen? Have you gone mad? Why are we being treated as criminals? Koharu asked, looking incredibly angry. Enough. You will call me Hokage-sama. I am no longer your friend. You all have crossed your limits years ago, and make it abundantly clear that you had chosen your paths. But first, let me secure this office, he said while unleashing his own chakra and ki at them and freezing everyone in their tracks, and went through several hand signs and the room darkened and several ceiling arrays spread became visible in the room before vanishing. Danzo cursed at his own laxity at being caught off guard, and now he was here without his usual root guard, defenseless. He was nevertheless surprised at the anger and power he felt that Sarutobi was exuding, and remembered why was his old friend and rival called the Shinobi no Kami after the death of Hashirama-sama. The thing is this, that you all have gone too far, and I have felt that it is better to rein in you fools before you bring down the wrath of the entire Shinobi continent on us, and we are crushed. First, tell me, Hamura, shall I kill your grandson Udan and your daughter-in-law for your stupidity? I seem to remember that is what you said when deleting the entire roll of Uzumaki clan from the village academy and curriculum. Even the Uzumaki's clan no mask hall located on the outskirts of the village has been abandoned and never repaired. Explain this to me, Koharu. You were made in charge of that duty a long time ago. And you, Danzo, I ought to simply seal your chakra, rip every memory out of your mind, and then publicly execute you and your henchmen, Fu Yamanaka and Torian Aburame, shall I? Oh. Yes. I know. About your root, Fu and Torian, your stupid plans, and your selling out S-rank secrets to the public about Naruto. Remember, the first and second chose me for this very reason. Damn you, Hiruzen. If only you had allowed me to do what I asked of you years ago, it could have been avoided. Danzo roared, while but Hamura and Koharu paled before they hung their heads in shame, but any further thought was simply stopped by the fact that the ninja holding him had tightened the grip on the ninjato, and it had cut very minutely into the irate elder's skin. Danzo stopped before the overzealous ninja took off his head. Sarutobi simply sighed to himself before he came to a decision, and then snapped his fingers. Immediately the 2 left members of the ANBU team arrived in front of him, and Hiruzen made a few hand gestures, but for the life of all they knew no one else knew what he was talking about. But then he felt himself being forced to his knees while the other 2 ninjas simply arrived and took up killing post-ions around him, and his robe being cut. Danzo gulped to himself when Hiruzen spoke in a cold, menacing voice that chilled all to their bones. I already gave you a lot of leeway, Danzo, but no, I must do whatever I can to keep you from ruining the peace and plans I have for Konoha. This will be your punishment, and remember that what I am doing is for the good of Konoha. Prepare him, now. The elders were both horrified at what their ex-teammate was going to do to his rival and old friend. This was not what they expected when they woke up this morning and were worried if this was what Hiruzen had in store for them after Danzo was done. If so, they could not even protest, as it would be effective, as signing a death certificate for Hiruzen was really angry and seemed to have really tightened the reins over them. After an hour of intensive sealing on Danzo, Hiruzen hated Danzo for what he had just made him do to him. If several years ago he had taken the advice of his student Jiraiya and simply cracked down harder on Orochimaru and Danzo's shady operations, this day wouldn't have come. He hated the caged bird seal variant that he had ordered to be placed on the small of Danzo's back, interwoven with the nerve endings of his spine. He hated, albeit to a lesser extent, the seal to be put on the bottom of his tongue that would keep him from speaking of village secrets, and the kill switches that were to be implanted on 3 separate parts of his body with everyone watching him. This is what he hated at how far Danzo had decided to fall, and now he was a virtual slave. This is your punishment, Danzo. I am ordering you to tell me the entire operations of Root and your history with Orochimaru. Hamura and Koharu, you are not to speak of this to anyone. If you do, this is my decree for all of you. You all are going to be branded as traitors and your entire families killed, and their bodies will be scattered to the wind after being burnt to ash. Your records will be erased, as even the Fire Daimyo will be advised to issue a kill-on-sight order for you and your associates. The bingo books will carry S rank, kill-on-sight orders. Your choice. I have, for too long, allowed you to DOD you please, and I am sick of it. I am the Hokage, and you will all refer to me as such, though I am ashamed as what you all have done. And Danzo, if I find there were any other stupid actions you took after I finish interrogating Fu and Torian, you will pay with your blood. Am I clear? Hiruzen spoke without any mercy or emotion visible on his face. All the ANBU had taken position behind elders, and Hiruzen himself was flanked by 2 of them. They all nodded, even Danzo, who looked to be in massive amounts of pain after the seals had been applied. Your root ninja will be given rehabilitation training, while their seals that inhibit their ability to speak and think freely will be removed. I will be personally overtaking the command of Root, and you will be introducing me to them. Though you will be their commander, but you will be reporting to me. I will be making sure of their loyalty to the village, and heaven help you, Danzo, if there are any children in the Black Ops. Now, that is over. Let's talk about your roles in allowing Uzumaki clan and the history of this village to be altered. Let's talk. He spoke, and the talks began that would shape Konoha into a better place. Yuzushigokyu no Sato, Yuzu no Kuni. There was silence in the grounds of Yuzu no Kuni as the 3 legendary ninjas stepped out of their coffins and stood in front of the persons that had revived them. Hinata Hyuga, who had used the technique in the future before she came to the past, was intimately familiar with the ins and out of the technique, but that was when she had massive and superbly fine controlled chakra reserves. Right now her body was feeling incredibly strained due to the chakra requirements of the technique. Was glad Naruto-kun was there to keep hold of her for the duration of calling the people through the use of Edo Tensei. Kurenai and Enko were arguably in shock. Here in front of them were the 2 figures of the shinobi era who were widely recognized for their power and strength. Both were the previous Kages of their village, and the woman, if they had read one's history, would know of her prowess and strength in battlefield and politics. Both women shuddered at the cold and much refined and noble look Mito Uzumaki was wearing that both the kunoichi were envious of, albeit they were more in awe than jealous. Looking at the woman who was looking as if she was going to rain hell upon them at any moment, and knowing the woman's prowess in Fuinjutsu, it was not impossible for her to do so. Shodai-sama and Naidame-sama, it is an honor to meet you both, though we are sorry for not recognizing Mito Uzumaki due to the fact that the history of the Uzumaki clan was nearly wiped from the archives of the Konoha after the destruction of Yuzu, and you can thank your protege Danzo Shimura along with Sandame's ex-teammates Koharu and Hamura for helping him to suppress the truth of Konoha's ties with Yuzu. We are Kunoichi of Konoha Shinobi Forces, and my name is Kurenai Yuhi, while my companion is Enko Mitarashi. She is a special jounin and works in torture and interrogation department. We are in the ruins of Yuzu no Kuni for training 2 heirs of clans. They are Naruto Uzumaki and his childhood friend Hinata Hyuga. They both were the ones who summoned you, but we are at a loss at how they brought you back to life, as we know that you are dead. Spoke Kurenai while suppressing her fangirl personality at seeing the 2 of the most widely recognized figures in Konoha. Enko was even worse, as she was licking her lips at seeing such dangerous ninjas in front of her. Though it had taken her a while, she had recognized the woman immediately from the pictures that Kushina-sensei had shown her once when she had gone to learn kenjutsu from her. The woman in front of them was no other than the legendary Mito Uzumaki Senju, wife of the first Hokage Hashirama Senju and the most advanced Fuinjutsu user in her time, and many times better than the Yandame, Sandame, Jiraiya and even Kushina Uzumaki. She suddenly thought back at what Hinata had said before coming here, that there might be someone who could remove her curse seal, and her eyes became wet slightly at the chance of finally being free of the snake bastard that had ruined her life. Mito Uzumaki was not a woman who could be surprised easily. The last thing she remembered was feeling the sweet release of freedom while sleeping in her bed at the age of 120. She remembered a bright light, and then nothing. A few moments before she had felt a pull, and then the feeling of suffocation as if she had been put into a small box, and the feeling disappeared as soon as it came. The door opened, and she found that the box was nothing more than a coffin, and her keen eyes caught the sight of the seals written on the coffin. She also saw her husband and his brother being present with her, and immediately knew that something was wrong as they were supposed to be dead. Like her, they also seemed to be a bit confused at how they were suddenly alive, but she saw something like a realization pass on Tobarama's face before he schooled his features and looked resigned to himself. Her eyes immediately looked in front of her, and she found an odd group in front of her consisting of two beautiful and young women in their late teens or early 20s. The Konoha headbands they were wearing made her relax, but then she saw them, a Hyuga girl and a boy with bright blonde hair and ice blue eyes. Those eyes immediately looked into her, and she caught the sight of several emotions including pain, sadness, hurt and hope. Her emotion-sensing ability activated, and she found that he contained a very familiar source of chakra, though it seemed to be diminished and incomplete. Her mind went into overdrive at the thought of the boy in front her being a Jinchuriki, and that of the Kyubi no Kitsune of which she was the very first container. But it couldn't be because he looked nothing like an Uzumaki. When the introductions were being done, her hands clenched at the thought of Konoha wiping out the history of her clan with the village and making their roles non-existent. Even her husband and her brother had been angry at the news they heard, for her negative emotion sensing had managed to find out the spike of anger, and she knew both were itching like her to go to Konoha and unleash hell upon Sarutobi and the others. She was about to speak, but her husband stepped forth and spoke. It seems that we have been recalled into the world of living because I remember dying in the battlefield during the first Shinobi War. What about you two, Tobarama and Mito? How was life after I passed on? Did the village remain stable? I died after I was attacked by Hanzo of AIM. He betrayed me and attacked me after I had been attacked by the Kuma forces. I helped my team to escape and was severely weakened. It led to my defeat. Though I can understand, it was foolish of me to believe that Hanzo would not take advantage of the fact due to the pact we had made, but he was rather ruthless and cunning. Spoke Tobarama Senju. You cannot talk about ruthlessness, for you are the one who practically created ruthlessness for your own agenda. In a battle you are a quite fearsome and brutal opponent, as witnessed by your battle tactics, taking advantage of any lapse in defense of your enemies, crudely and calculatingly attacking them at moments they were vulnerable. It seems that you recognize the technique used to bring you back. How can you not, for you were the one who created it in the first place? Spoke Naruto, earning surprised looks from Anko and Kurenai at his knowledge. Yes. I recognize it, though I am surprised that you managed to perform an Edo Tensei. I sense a great chakra in you. You are the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi, aren't you, and at least a half-blooded Uzumaki. Also you have minute traces of Senju chakra in you. But I think we all want to ask how a child can know a kinjutsu and perform it without flinching. You know the requirements for the jutsu, a living sacrifice. How does a child know about this technique which was sealed in the Forbidden Scroll? And don't even think about lying to me, he commanded while leaking a minute amount of his killing intent at them, causing both Kunoichi to look alarmed at the knowledge of needing a sacrifice for the kinjutsu. But before they could say anything, Naruto answered while keeping calm. You can switch off your intimidation tactics, Lord Second, because it was the only way that we both could talk to you about several things. All of them are important for the coming future, but it would be better if less persons know about it. So if Lady Uzumaki would be so kind to raise a barrier between our teachers and you that would block all sound and sight, it would be beneficial to us all. And please, Anko-san and Kurenai-sensei, do not attempt to say otherwise. We will discuss about jutsu and its requirements later. Naruto finished on a commanding note. Yes. Both Hashikun and I would like to know more about the village and its state, and also how you possess the Kyubi. What happened to Kushina and our family? And what do you mean about the coming conflicts in the future? Asked Mito Uzumaki while she raised a few injust a barrier that hindered sight and sound while making a hidden sweep for any bugs or summons that could be used for spying. In a flash, Hinata had moved behind Naruto and using her Jukengon for a blow that immediately knocked him out. Sorry Naruto-kun, but I think that you are not ready for this talk right now. She spoke apologetically as she lowered him on the ground slowly while this action startled the undead summons, but all relaxed at her words. Gomen sighed, but it was necessary, for he is not ready for what I am going to tell you all. My name is Hinata Hyuga and I am using the contact Lady Mito and my great-grandfather cooked up to save myself from the barbarian rule of the Hyuga elders, and I love Naruto-kun with all my heart. Though I look like I'm only 8 years old, but it is not true. My mental age is close to being 40 years old, and that is due to the fact that she told as far as she was interrupted. Because you traveled back into the past. Don't look so surprised, for it was one of my unfinished and fancy ideas that were based on the things that Mito's father showed me. I presume that my diary was lost, and you found the research for the jutsu and finished the incomplete Uzumaki technique. I had planned to go back and change the way my fight ended with Madara, but fate had other plans for me. If you don't mind me asking how many years it took for you to complete the jutsu? Said a jovial-looking Hashirama, ignoring Tobarama face-palming and Mito muttering some not very nice things that she was going to do to her baka of a husband if she got the time. Nearly 10 years, Shodame-sama, but please listen what I have to say, and the reason I came back, spoke Hinata while all three listened to her tale of the terrible future that was to come if they were unprepared. She told about the survival of Madara Uchiha after his fight with the first Hokage and his Mad Moon Eye plan. She told about Akatsuki and their goals. The attack of the Kyubi on the village Konoha and the truth behind the failure of the seal of Kushina. The treatment of Naruto in the village before she met him and took him with her. The plans of Danzo that he did using Root Shinobi. Sarutobi's failure of killing Orochimaru and Orochimaru's mad quest for immortality. The attack on Konoha during the Chunin exams and many other things including the massacre of the Uchiha clan and its truth. She specially told about the Fourth Shinobi War and Madara's role in it, and Naruto's death, and why she had come to the past. In the end all three were wearing grim looks at the chaotic and problem-filled future that was to come in time. They were worried about many things but before anyone could say anything else, Tobirama spoke. You mentioned the Uchihas were wiped out. And you say that I am responsible for it. Kenta, tell me how and why. Lord Second, during your reign you were primarily responsible for establishing Konoha's organizational system and you established various organizations such as the Academy, the ANBU, the Chunin exams and the Konoha military police force, the latter of which you created as a sign of trust towards the Uchiha who made up the majority of that organization. However, many of your policies and jutsu that you developed ended up causing problems later down the line. Danzo believes, and I know you also believe, that the rebellious elements bearing Madara's will would always be smoldering in the Uchiha clan, but you are the one who drove the Uchiha to it, Lord Second. It could be said that the seeds got sown with the Uchiha police force you created. People who crack down on crime are often easily disliked. The more authority such a group has, more conceited it can get. You conspicuously shoved them away to the outskirts of the village, next to the prison under the pretext of closely monitoring the criminals. A few members of the Uchiha clan would later come to believe that this was just an elaborate way to ostracize them from the village and its government. This led them to secretly follow the will of Madara Uchiha and decades later, be massacred after plotting to stage a coup d'etat. Though that is a matter which is not important right now, answered Hinata without flinching at the glare and power surrounding Nidaime Hokage during her explanation. Tobirama, calm down now. I understand your worries and I am even more worried at what the future holds for my descendant. He already has faced such pain at a young age and will be hunted later in his life. Though I want to thank you on his behalf for taking him under your care, I hope you will continue to help him and I have decided that I will help him to best of my abilities, spoke Mito and turned a sickly sweet smile at both Hashirama and Tobirama, both who began sweating under her crazy look bordering on insane and spoke with her voice sending shivers down their undead spines and an Oni peeking out from behind her. And these two will also help all of you in the training for the next 2 years. Won't you, Hashi-kun and Tobi-chan? Yes, WWE will help. Say it, Tobirama, won't you? Spoke a madly sweating Hashirama with a very enthusiastic Tobirama nodding like a bobblehead. The sickly aura disappeared and Hinata breathed out a sigh of relief. She went to Naruto and using her knowledge woke him up. Naruto woke to a pounding headache and he asked the first thing that came to his mind. Mind telling me how I have this killer headache, Hinata-chan? He asked with his frosted smile, which was just a quirk of his lips at the edges but suited him just fine. She blushed while silently wondering when she would see his wide foxy smile of his, again. Ah no, Naruto-kun. You were so excited that you slipped and cracked your head on the pavement, and became unconscious for 2 hours. I discussed everything with them, and they have decided to help us and our Minders. Oh, I forgot about them. Lady Mito, will you please drop the barrier? I will have to calm them about the Kinjutsu and maybe you can help us. I told you everything, didn't I? Hinata asked while pleading with her eyes, a gesture not lost on Lady Mito who could feel the turmoil within the young Hyuga heiress. Yes, you did. Now let us drop the barrier, and tell them what we have decided for you all. Fuyan Kai, Lady Mito said while making a ram hand seal. The red barrier around them dropped and Anko and Kurenai rushed towards them and Anko snarled at Mito and said, What the hell, you old hag, couldn't you warn us that you were going to take that much time? We were waiting for many hours. As she trailed off as a massive and terrible Ki fell upon them. Lady Mito was standing in front of her looking ready to punch the daylights out of her with a terrible aura behind her looking just like an Oni which looked like it was going to rain hell upon them. The sky had darkened and storm clouds broiled behind her making her an intimidating sight. What did you call me just now? Let me just tell you I am not old. Got it, child? Lady Mito roared while Hashirama and Tobirama had face-palmed at the loss of composure and the hot-headed angry temperament of the Uzumaki woman. Everyone cowered from the obviously bipolar woman who then smiled sweetly at them making all of them at the edge. It was not I am happy to see you smile. But rather it looked more like I am going to skin you alive and then pour salt and acids on your bearskin type smile and sent shivers down everyone's spines. Anko felt that she had just signed her death certificate at her mad and insane look. Kurenai and Naruto shot her a look that had her feeling a bit worried while Hinata's reaction had her sweating bullets. The girl was looking at Lady Mito with what could only be interpreted as awe and a healthy dose of hero worship. Anko shivered at the feeling of disturbance in the natural order of things and then apologized to all. It is all right. Now we have decided to train you all but only on certain conditions that are as follows. Break them and we will kill you and dump your bodies in the sea as fish food. Got it or not? It did not look like the woman was joking and both Kurenai and Anko nodded immediately at her glare. Naruto looked amused but with his ice-cold expression it was really hard to say. Oh yes. Now the conditions and the rules. The rules are simple and easy. Never be late. Proper respect must be shown to us at all times when we are your teachers and to your companions while in formal occasions. No one is allowed to try and persuade another not to leave. Training uniforms will be worn at all times except when bathing and sleeping, and they will be given to you tomorrow. No complaints. Expect the unexpected. After your training is complete, you may train whoever you deem worthy, but you must take responsibility for that person's action. Finally, you must never reveal the location of the place or the source of your training. Even if that old monkey Saru-chan asks, you are all going to lie. This is essential as we want to keep this technique a secret, and why is that I will tell you all later. Burn these rules into your memories and never forget them. Write it down if you must, but so long as you are here you will be governed by these rules. After which, you are free to make your own decisions. I want an oath on that, on your blood and your headband. She spoke seriously. Hi Shursho, they all answered at once and recited the oath. Good, she said with a smile coming across her lips. Now, the guidelines we are about to give you is for your benefit, and following them will help you greatly in your training, so pay close attention, and feel free to ask for clarification on anything when my husband is done. They all nodded their heads with varying degrees of excitement with the prospects of finally beginning their training under the legendary ninjas. Hashirama stepped in front of them and spoke in his own soothing voice. Take everything one step at a time, have patience with yourself and rest when you are supposed to rest, and he turned serious. And most importantly, never let your emotions guide you. Let them strengthen you and motivate you, but a decision made solely on emotions such as hate, anger, jealousy, greed and vengeance is a poor decision, and in the end will only lead to suffering. Hinata suddenly had a feeling of sadness wash over her. The words the Hokage spoke had a profound effect on her, as she knew from first-hand experience what he was talking about. Now that that has been said, remember it and hold fast to it. Are there any questions? This time Kurenai was the first to speak up. When we will begin our training, sensei, and for how long will we be under your care? This time Tobirama, who had been standing in the corner, straightened and then spoke. 2 days after today, at the dawn of the first ray of light, we will begin our training, and it will run for nearly 5 years. Do not worry, for Hinata had told us that we have only 2 years. Fortunately for us, Lady Mito will be opening a special training chamber in Yuzu, which was sealed by her before she came to Konoha. It was a project that she lost interest in, but she completed it and sealed it away for the future use of Uzumaki clan. The chamber can slow down time, and we can adjust the chamber setting so that the next 1.5 years will be equal to 5 years. But remember that you will also age accordingly inside. Outside, the time may be 1.5 years, but you will lose 5 years of your life. Tell me, do you find this acceptable? When they all nodded, he went on. Okay, then you all get your supplies and we will get food for the time frame in our sealing scrolls. Lady Mito will unseal the chamber and repair any damage that has been done to it. My elder brother will help you in making a monument for the fallen Uzumaki brethren and also help in the repairs for the village. Don't worry, for it is our way of atoning for the failure of the village not helping its allies. He sighed and then looked out towards the ruins of the buildings of the village that was once home to one of the most feared clans in the elemental nations. All of the present persons moved towards their respective tasks, and soon the town square was empty except for a bird or a rabbit. 2 days later, all the 7 people were standing in front of the underground caverns that were beneath Yuzu that had been hidden by using seals and several genjutsu. The entire pathway had several traps and other security seals present. Lady Mito had taken the last 2 days combing over the entire island with Hashirama and Tobirama cleaning the island, and the whole security seals of the island were activated, and then the entire island had been filled from the trees from the Hashirama's Mokuton. The entire trees were kept close to the village boundaries. It was done to remove the cover-up of the Battle of Yuzu and the invasion marks left on the land. He also created a huge tree as a monument for the fallen Uzumakis. The last 2 days were easily the most hectic for the living, as being undead summons all of them worked tirelessly to make Yuzu habitable again, and to serve as a base of operations. Lady Mito went through several hand signs at a rapid rate that were practically a blur from all even to Kurenai and Anko. The cavern wall rippled as several seals flashed into being, with each vanishing at a very fast rate one after the another. Everyone seemed to be enthusiastic at seeing such high-level fuinjutsu, and suddenly a part of the wall vanished into nothingness, and a path became illuminated with torches burning all along the way. Follow me and keep to the path. And please don't go on anywhere without anyone with you, or you might get lost forever. She spoke, making others oddly spooked, though no one noticed the slight smirk adorning the corner of her mouth. The party of 7 persons moved through the caverns, and then suddenly there was a ripple of movement that encompassed the entire group, and they were suddenly walking on lush plain complete with green grass and plant life. Everyone except Mito had their eyes widened by the sudden change in scenery, when suddenly both Hashirama and Tobirama stiffened and shot Lady Mito an incredulous gaze filled with awe and fear. Is this a summoning plane? You found or created an entire summon plane by yourself, Mito. I am so proud. I got a real ass-kicking wife of mine who knows what her stuff. Hashirama was promptly bashed on the head by her slightly blushing wife, who looked everywhere but at her companions. Yes. This was a summoning plane for an ancient creature called Kraken, but it died many thousand years ago. My Uzumaki ancestors found this plane and began experimenting to try to become sages here. However, one of them was more interested in making this plane a perfect training ground, and he created several seals to change this plane. It is located in a pocket dimension accessible only by a certain path that we took located underneath the land of Yuzo. I managed to create a time seal on this plane that allows me to manipulate time with respect to the real world, but the only drawback is that our bodies age like we would have if we spent time in the real world. Whatever we need, this plane can become, and don't take it as an illusion. It is very real. The seals created by my ancestor change the landscape by manipulating the seals, and all we have to do is know the correct sequence to do so. This is our training ground, and we will begin it from now. Get ready, for this is the last time to back out. After this there is no turning back. Spoke Lady Mito. Naruto, Hinata, Enko, and Kurenai all nodded with serious expressions on their faces, and with a final hand seal, the cavern became shut, sealing the persons inside for the next 1.5 years in real time, but inside it was going to long and hard 5 years underneath the ninjas that were once legends of their time frame. All the 3 undead ninjas were looking at their 4 students for the next 5 years. This time frame they had gotten was enough to make them into decent ninjas of old time. From what they had managed to find out, the standards for the ninjas had fallen very far. Today Jounin was equivalent to the Warring Era's elite genin. This was all due to the fact that the ninjas of this age had become complacent due to the long eras of fake peace, and that is why they had been slaughtered in the 4th Shinobi War. This attitude was what they had to break, and by the gods they would do so. Now follow me outside so that we can begin, and do not keep me waiting, said Hashirama in his happy-go-lucky voice, and went out of the Mokutan house he had made using his bloodline. 45 minutes later the 4 students were finally outside. It took them 15 minutes just to stand up due to the gravity and resistance seals that had been planted on their bodies by Lady Mito. They were more difficult to work with due to their intricacies and complexity. Now that you are finally here, start running and don't stop till I tell you to stop, Tobirama said. I need to see where I need to start with you. They ran all morning non-stop until one by one they each began to drop from exhaustion one by one, until finally Naruto came to a crashing halt after 7 kilometers worth of running. They had covered a distance that would be considered reasonable for a genin, with the exception of Kurenai and Hinata, who couldn't make past 2 kilometers. Alright, meditate for 15 minutes, and when you're done I will teach you how to conceal weapons so you don't have to go about with that pouch and holster all the time, Lady Mito said calmly, and I have already taken the liberty of burning your weapons pouch and holsters. After they meditated she began to demonstrate the art of concealing weapons. Now you try, she said as she made an entire box of saban, 30 kunai, 50 shuriken, a pair of kamas, a pair of sais, a short sword and 2 fuma shuriken appear from her clothing, and then making it all disappear back into her clothes. She then unfurled the scroll which she pulled out from under her kimono, and unsealed an arsenal 3 times as much as what she was currently carrying. The best thing about the weapons was that they were all made of chakra metal. She looked at their amazed and awed faces and sighed to herself. These tricks were taught to herself and her generation of all shinobi, such little tricks, and this was nothing for them. It made getting one's weapons being unable to be seized, and one couldn't to be unarmed even after getting caught. She often wondered how much the standards the village and the academy had fallen nowadays. Later that day, Naruto and the others, after getting the hang of concealing weapons, were treated to a meal of rice, fish, and vegetables. Now that you have learned the art of concealing weapons, I must increase the level of this art. For now these are your weapons. In Yuzu, we were given these grade of weapons in our clan house after we learned to be dangerous with the training weapons, but before we were not even allowed to touch the metal. So taking that in mind, I will teach you all to be deadly with nothing but a pair of chopsticks, paper, or even your food, said Lady Mito, while others looked suitably scared, or in case of Hinata, awed. She then took away their metal weapons and unsealed their new ones. Enko had pouted a bit on relinquishing the weapons, but 1Ki enhanced glare later, she practically gave the entire armory she carried over to Mito-sama. The funny thing about the new weapons was that they were all made of construction paper. These are your new weapons, and until you are able to use them like real weapons you are forbidden to use real ones, she said, noting the incredulous faces of her 3 students, reason being, a ninja must be able to make anything in his hands a deadly weapon, from a stick to a peanut, as I want you all to be. Now start concealing these weapons. When I return there must be nothing left in your piles, and I must not see any unusual bulges. But before she was gone into the house she paused. And don't bend them. When you get the hang of this you may wash up, eat and rest. Your mental training begins tomorrow. She began to walk away with one last thing to say before she disappeared in the doorway. Enjoy this freedom while it lasts, for tomorrow your new life truly begins and your old life ends. We will forge you to be the best, and that is our promise to the world. After dinner they all returned to their common room, where they were asked to sleep side by side on futons, but not before showering first. Their senseis locked them all inside the room, saying it was for their own good, and that they needed to become less distracted by the body of the opposite gender, and that Naruto was lucky to be getting such good training and need to grow up and stop acting like a child, and that he would get used to it. They eventually did become accustomed to seeing such sights, but that did not mean Enko did not stop teasing others with her body. She even groped Naruto's crotch before giving Hinata a sly grin while the said girl glared at her heatedly. Kurenai often tried not to ogle Enko like a piece of meat. Per Naruto had the worst. To him every female body was like a dream goddess. Anko's groping had made turn redder than a tomato. He had just tried to ignore the feelings that erupted in his stomach at the sight of beautiful nude females. After they were settled, Tobirama came in and made them aware of the 3 charts on the ceiling of their sleeping room, one of which was chart of pressure points and their effects, death, paralysis, and unconsciousness, and the other a chart of striking point and their effects. Memorize each and every one of these points and their effects, as well as combining consecutive pressure points or striking points. Make them second nature to you. With that he left, leaving 3 very tired students staring at the ceiling, trying to memorize the charts with diligence. He grinned to himself, for tomorrow was going to be the beginning of true hell for these cute little students. The next day, it was 5 o'clock in the morning and our 4 ninjas in training were all snug and warm on their futons dreaming happy dreams until a torrent of ice-cold water was dashed on them, immediately jolting them from their slumber. They're not accustomed to the water on that cold as freezing ice. You have 20 minutes to get ready and eat breakfast. After that meet me behind the house, said Lady Mito, and Tobirama nodded while lowering his hand, which was how they knew he was responsible for their impromptu bath. With that they disappeared in the shadows of the room. All of them complied, even though reluctantly, as they hastily washed up, put on their clothes for training and ate breakfast, but they soon felt ill as they saw what their sensei had set up for them at the back of the house. The back of the house was like a forest and got darker the further you looked, and there was a lake to the right, but that was not the cause for their sudden illness. The back of the house looked like something out of a war movie, except with a lot more traps that actually worked. There was an obstacle course starting with a 12-foot wall and a single ninja wire spanning 50 feet attached to the top of the wall, and a pole of similar height. From that there was more poles scattered haphazardly about in different heights leading to the lake, and from the lake thin slabs of either cardboard or sheeting ply on the surface in an arc leading back to the land, where rows of swinging blades awaited them to pass through, then through a jungle of ribbons and soft material, all with a large sheet of foil paper underneath and a second 12-foot wall with a board perched on a stand on the other end. Not to mention everything had bells on them. The scariest thing was the things they could see. As they stared wide-eyed at the torture machine, Tobirama cleared his throat to get their attention. Before you begin, first warm up by stretching, then do 50 push-ups, 75 sit-ups and a 5-kilometer jog. Get going, he barked. To some that sounded like exactly what it was, a warm-up, but when you are not accustomed wearing seals, while wearing a weighted suit that resists every motion you make and adds 50 pounds to your body, this warm-up was more like having a run up a mountain while carrying a heavy slab of stone on your body. 2 hours later they were finished with their warm-up. Naruto didn't know how much more he could go, Hinata and Anko didn't know how they made it, and Kurenai, being the only ninja with the least stamina, was in tears as Lady Mito had practically forced them all to finish, and yet she did not give up even though she was taunted, ridiculed and belittled all the way at random intervals. With all resting, Tobirama was explaining their assignment, or torture or whatever you want to call it. Firstly, I forbid the use chakra in this exercise. That seemed to take the wind out of Naruto's sail. You must scale the wall, move across the tight wire while killing or incapacitating the hidden targets. If you don't, they attack back. Hop from pole to pole without falling while dodging the weapons we will be throwing at you. Next, you run across the sheets on the lake and kill or incapacitate the targets in the boat without falling in. Make it through the blades without getting sliced up and through the ribbons and sheet without disturbing it. Go over the second wall and land on the board without breaking it or making a sound. Each of the 4 students were as pale as ghosts now. Unfortunately, it did not end there. Oh, if hear a bell, the sound of the foil, I see the ribbon or sheets move, or you get hit by a weapon, you start over immediately. And you will do this every day except Sunday until you can do the entire course in 30 seconds or less. The grin he had on was almost sadistic. Hey, no need to worry, this is only level 1. Oh, by the way, and no bloodline ability. Begin. Uzumaki Training Area, Summoning Plane, Yuzushiogaku no Sato, Yuzu no Kuni. 2 months after entering the training plane, Naruto and the others were standing in front Lord Hashirama for their training in ninjutsu. Last 2 weeks had been worse than hell for the 4 ninjas in training. Both Anko and Kurenai had been in tears to find out that their hard-earned skills were nothing important to their teachers who had belittled them and their teachers in the academy, or their senseis back in village for poor and substandard training. Lady Mito had asked the girls and Naruto about seduction training and their first kills. While both Hinata and Naruto got her approval for doing the rabbit test back when they were young, the older kunoichi were lambasted heavily for neglecting their all-round training. Kurenai was given more training on improving her taijutsu and ninjutsu, while making sure her chakra control and stamina was increased by using more fine-tuning methods for those exercises. Anko, on the other hand, had gotten an earful for her weak seduction training and, in words of Tobirama-sensei, mediocre taijutsu, using a weak version of snake style, and just above average skills in ninjutsu. Anko's pride and ego had gotten very easily bruised at the brushing off of her skills, especially those she had worked her ass off to improve after being abandoned by Orochimaru. Lady Mito had told her after testing both of them for seduction techniques and hentaijutsu that they were atrocious at the best and needed to learn the basics again, and she would teach them all, including Hinata and Naruto, but after 1 month of their training, for they needed better chakra control and physical conditioning to learn them. Today they were supposed to learn ninjutsu from Lord Hashirama and how to harness their elemental chakra. They had been tested for their elements, with Naruto being the most surprising of them, with 3 main affinities of earth, water and lightning, with a medium affinity for wind and fire. Lady Mito theorized that Naruto might be able to utilize Mokuton later but with massive practice. Hinata had 2 main affinities of water and lightning with a medium affinity for earth and a very minor affinity for fire. Enko had 2 main affinities of fire and earth with a minor affinity to wind, while Kurenai surprised others with her 2 main affinities for fire and wind and medium affinities for lightning and water. Lord Hashirama began speaking. Earth chakra is the most dangerous and the hardest to master out of all the elements. He was interrupted when Enko failed to conceal her scoff at the notion. He sighed to himself and then spoke. Let me guess, like most others, you thought that because there was no obvious benefit, like cutting or burning, you thought earth chakra was useless, am I right? Enko and Kurenai nodded dumbly, gaining another sigh. The first Hokage started his explanation. First and foremost, earth chakra is possibly the most versatile chakra. While we who have earth natures cannot cut like wind, burn like fire, shock like lightning, or flow like water, we have several things to our advantage. But earth is considered the weakest element after water. After all, the earth nature control exercises are the easiest to master, even if you have an opposing element. This time it was Hashirama who snorted at his student's ignorance. Wrong. What most people don't seem to realize is that it's damn near impossible to master an element. The first 2 exercises are to master manipulating an element. There is a third and a fourth exercise that are a great deal harder. For example, Earth's third exercise is to be mastered using iron. Once I finally finish teaching you that, you'll be able to make weapons in the middle of battle, your jutsu will be so much stronger, and other benefits. All of them were stunned, they had never even heard of these. I guess it wasn't their fault after all. They have been taught nothing, just the basics, and those are also much different from what we have been taught. Earth's fourth element seems damn near impossible to me, seeing as I do not have a bloodline related to it. All of them looked at him, curious to why he would say that. For most of Earth's techniques, one needs to be calm, cool, and collected. This set of techniques brings out the heat in everyone. Once even I complete the fourth exercise, I will be able to use lava, which unfortunately I was never able to do to the wars and conflicts. Everyone felt like they had been punched in the stomach. Admittedly, I will never have the control over it that someone with a bloodline would, but that won't really matter with lava now, will it? Their eyes gleamed for a moment in anticipation, and Hashirama smiled to himself in his mind. Once all 4 exercises are mastered, something that takes several lifetimes, mind you, only then can someone claim mastery over an element. However, I'm getting off topic. Earth jutsu, when used correctly, are more defensive in nature than offensive. In fact, even the more offensive ones are best used to counterattack, such as the Hell Zone Rock Shard, or Stone Spear. Also, to make up for this, we have a multitude of the more offensive dragon-type jutsu, such as Mud Dragon Bullet, Earth Dragon Blast, Earth Dragon God Blast, and the most powerful Lava Dragon Explosion technique. Everyone felt like their heads were spinning. No one had never even heard of 4 of those jutsu. Hashirama just sighed before taking out a kunai. He charged it with Doton chakra and threw it into a tree. Everyone's eyes followed the kunai, widening in shock as the kunai, instead of penetrating as it should have, left a massive dent in the tree, the wood exploding away from the kunai. Now, for channeling earth chakra into weapons, it can do one of 2 things, like wind can either cut or penetrate. The first, as you saw, would cause an explosive amount of blunt force trauma, the amount one is able to channel depending on the person's skill and the weapon used. Like kunai caused that, whereas a saban would only break a bone. Break a bone? Only? Enko and Kurenai were beginning to regret not experimenting with the various chakra natures. The second choice, depending on the way you form the earth chakra, allows form the earth chakra? Hashirama looked annoyed at the interruption. Yes, formed. You do know the 2 types of jutsu? The ones where you can channel a set amount of chakra and then let it go, and the other one where you have to channel a continuous amount of chakra for the entire duration of the jutsu? Same principle. Enko nodded in understanding. This one takes up more chakra to use, but that's not much of a problem for me. With continuous channeling of earth chakra, well, I'm not really sure how to describe it. Basically, the penetrating power is increased because of added weight to the weapon. I'm not sure how it works, or just how the extra weight doesn't affect the throw or stab, but there are still a lot of things I don't know. Besides that, earth jutsus are used to control the battlefield. If I have the time to use the jutsu, in an area I'm not afraid of modifying, I can control the entire pace and pattern of whatever fight I am in, finished Hashirama. Enko felt like an idiot. In fact, she felt like most of the shinobi world was made up of idiots. So much can be done with chakra, and apparently they have barely scratched the surface. How did you learn all this, Lord First? Asked Naruto. I learned some of it in a few books I found. And the rest of it I learned from experimenting. I even used my clones for that, so there is no reason for people not to know this. Well, let's get started. And the training began. 2 weeks later, Naruto and Hinata were standing with Hashirama-sensei alone in a secluded part of the training plane. He had requested these 2 to accompany him this morning after finishing the exercises for the earth manipulation. Naruto had progressed a lot on this front and chakra control due to the fact that he was using nearly 300 Kage Bunshin to increase the times of doing a single exercise. As Tobirama-sensei had told him that the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu could be used for various chakra exercises due to the psychic link they all possessed back to the original. He even made him revise the technique until he could do it without the hand seals, and now he was training to make the clones appear without the puff of smoke, or without pausing in his movements to concentrate on making the clones appear. He and Hinata had finished the following chakra control exercises, and their senseis were most impressed at their fast mastering of control. Leaf balancing technique, advanced leaf balancing technique, tree walking exercise technique, advanced tree walking exercise technique, water walking exercise technique, advanced water walking/swimming technique, chakra armor exercise technique, chakra enhanced muscles exercises/senses technique. Now they were waiting for Hashirama-sensei to tell them why he had them secluded from others. Chakra in its simplest and purest form desires one thing: balance. Push and pull. In and out. Yin and yang. Such is the principle that the world is based on, and it is what keeps it functioning. In my meditations I have found that therein lies the greatest potential for shinobi. By utilizing what I like to call true chakra, a human can unlock a newfound power and untapped potential. The difficulties, however, is that humans, over time, have come to develop elemental affinities through constant use of jutsu. A single person becomes fond of a certain element, and utilizes it throughout their life. This causes elemental chakra to build up within the body, which becomes an inheritable trait to any offspring produced. I speculate that is also the source of those abilities that are unique to bloodlines. However, the elemental affinity is both a curse and a blessing, as it gives way to techniques of respective affinity while, at the same time, converting true chakra into elemental chakra. It is a great loss because true chakra can be so easily tainted and difficult to store within the body, yet its effects and benefits are astounding. I found that it greatly enhances the physical being, resulting in an increase of overall performance, strength, speed, stamina, as well as superior senses. I have also found that it increases one's growth, even when said person is well into the prime of their life. Aging process is also significantly diminished, evident by the fact that at the age of 36 I look barely 25, and if I manage to die a natural death, I believe that the human lifespan will also be increased a great deal. I theorize that perhaps the Uzumaki clan somehow has a hidden reservoir of true chakra within their bodies, hence their great vitality and unnaturally long lifespan. The only way to unlock true chakra is through intense meditation and excellent chakra control. The process is not unlike the one used for senjutsu, however. Whereas natural energy requires an open mind to commune with nature, true chakra can only be found by turning one's sight inward. The chakra within the body must be refined by having the chakra circulate through the body at rapid speeds and fine and highly compressed waves. This is extremely dangerous, as if it is not done with the proper amount of control, the body will be torn to shred from the inside and is guaranteed to result in death. After 2 hours of circulation, the elemental chakra will be forced out of the body. Slowly cease the circulation of chakra and allow it to spread to every cell in the body. When the body is saturated, continue to meditate and allow body to gradually adapt to the true chakra. Once the process has been repeated for several days and the body has become accustomed to it, you can seal true chakra within your body, allowing you to utilize in battle without fear of having it tainted by elemental chakra. Finished Hashirama and looked back at his 2 spellbound students. He smiled at their expressions before adopting what they called his teacher mode. Now you too will be learning to harmonize the true chakra in your body. I believe that your young age will help you in getting more benefits from it. I will help you in doing this along every day for the next week or so, and until I say so, do not attempt to teach the others. It is very imperative, for this will allow you an ace in the coming conflicts in the future. They both nodded at his words and sat down cross-legged on the floor for their training. Hashirama smiled at their enthusiasm before he looked at the horizon and saw the storm clouds gathering at the far end of the plain. He mentally wished his students strength before he too became engrossed in their training. 2 years later, Uzumaki Training Area, Summoning Plain, Yuzushiogaku no Sato, Yuzu no Kuni. The last 2 years had been very interesting for the 4 shinobi in training. They had been put through hell and other unmentionable tortures in what their undead teachers dubbed as light and day-to-day training. Both Anko and Kurenai had been very thoroughly trained in the aspects they lacked in, though Kurenai had become a trained assassin in the ways of the Uzumaki clan. She had pledged herself to the service of Uzumaki clan and Naruto after she had found out that the Yuhis were primarily a clan of assassins, and unlike most kunoichi, the Yuhi clan back in the times of Warring Clans era when they were living in the whirlpool before moving out and settling in Konoha was made primarily of women. They had embraced the more underhanded path of kunoichi. They were tricksters and seducers in its purest form. They would stab you with a dagger in your back while giving you a sweet embrace and a secret kinjutsu of their clan which allowed their salvia to become like poison. It took a great amount of control and a lot training to properly learn this technique, and as a result of this training they were prized as one of the most dangerous assassins. Now Kurenai had a spectacular control of her ability which allowed her to control the poison in such a way that she could poison a man with just a kiss and still not let him die. Yuhis were employed by the Uzumaki clan as their primary retainers and often worked in secret as their hidden hand in the village. Kurenai had lost her family in the Kyubi attack and her house had been destroyed, otherwise her mother would have begun her training when she reached 12 years of age. But now she knew her heritage and had wholeheartedly embraced it. Her training in hentai jutsu and seduction had been completed by Lady Mito, who knew several scrolls and journals of the previous heads of the Yuhi clan and had been left in Yuzu. She had finished her elemental manipulation of fire and wind, while she was finishing lightning, and her water manipulation was going to be begun under both Tobirama-sensei and Lady Mito. Her next goals were getting her chakra capacity to low Sannin level from her current high Jounin level. After reaching ANBU capacity, her chakra control had reached to elite ANBU level, and she could unleash several genjutsu, including the Temple of Nirvana technique, without any help, and using only 1/3 hand seals for thrice times the original time frame. She even learnt the Tobirama's Bringer of Darkness genjutsu, but she had managed to only bring down it to half the hand seals. Now she was aiming for the next 3 years to be able to use her elements using only a single hand seal and using 2 elements simultaneously, with using single hand seals with her 2 hands at the same time. She had learnt the secret taijutsu of the Yuhi clan, which was very difficult to utilize as it required a very flexible and nimble body to work with, and it was more like a dance in which she could use daggers, kunai, saban, and even chakra scalpels to land strikes on the opponent's nerves, muscles, and even blood circulatory system. She was now at mid-jounin level at taijutsu, but for her mastery in the taitsu style she needed to add any of chakra natures in the strikes to cripple the enemy. On the other hand, Enko also had gotten her curse seal removed in a year in her training. Her chakra levels had reached up to mid-kage level after the seal being removed, but her chakra control had been shot to hell. She trained her ass off to reach mid-Sannin level of chakra control and abused the hell out of Kage Bunshin. She could not make hundreds like Naruto, but she could easily make over 30, and less than 45. Also, she had to be careful as her mind could not take the backlash of 12 or more clones getting dispelled at once, unlike Naruto, who had a tailed beast sealed inside him to take care of him. She was given scrolls on the true snake style, and her body elastic technique was found to easily useful in helping in the katas of the style. The style timed her movements to aim for vital spots. Punches that targeted the temples of the head, tensile fingers with elongated fingernails that tried to gouge out eyes, strikes aiming for pressure and tenketsu points, grasping, cobra-like lunges at the esophagus to tear apart the delicate organ, kicks flying towards the crotch or to savagely damage ligaments. The style was all about incapacitating and killing through the weakest parts of the human body. She also learned the taijutsu style of the Goken to complement her earth nature, and used earth chakra in her strikes to shatter the defense of the enemy, and she was extremely proficient at it. Enko's 2 main affinities of fire and earth had been finished, and now she had reduced the hand seals to 5 or 4 to unleash any technique. Her minor affinity to wind was at a level where she could unleash her jutsu using half the hand seals. Like Kurenai, her goal for the next 3 years was the same: get to a level where she could be able to use her elements using only a single hand seal and using 2 elements simultaneously, with using single hand seals with her 2 hands at the same time, and launch collaboration jutsus. She also had trained with Lady Mito in the use of katana and atanto simultaneously, who was kenjutsu master on par with the Kiri swordsman like Kushina Uzumaki was in her time. She had learned the art of kenjutsu from Kushina Uzumaki, but after her death had prevented her from learning the full style. But here she was pushed to levels that were insane, and right now she could safely say she could handle both Yugao Yuzuki and Genmai Shirani, which were the leading kenjutsu practitioners in Konoha, without any problem. Even Hashirama-sensei had complimented her on the use of 2 weapons simultaneously. She had been trained in the art of seduction and hentai jutsu with Kurenai, but she found her true calling in torture and interrogation. She was given several books on the subject by her senseis, who wanted her to become very best at her arena of ninja arts. She was very good and had learned many torture techniques and arts. On the other hand, Enko's secret training had several unintended side effects. She had seen the way her summons had looked at her, so she took the initiative from Lady Mito to form a rapport with them. Fortunately for her, the snake summons had grown tired of the arbitrary rule of Manda over them, so most of the snakes were planning a coup under the leadership of new leader of snake summons. Last she heard the coup would be done till the end of the next year. Until then she had been asked not to use summoning as it was messing up their schedule. Only her personal summon by the name of Ami was allowed, as she was playing no specific role in the coup. When Hinata Hyuga had used the Ito Tensei to bring out these 3, she hadn't imagined her life changing by this much. Now she was a fully fledged kunoichi who, in the words of Lady Mito, was nothing like the women she had gotten the impression of from their talks, who were more interested in bishounen looking boys and going on diets, and other rubbish. Hinata was now at mid-jounin level with her chakra capacity, and her chakra control was at high jounin level. She was proficient in the 2 main affinities of water and lightning, and her manipulation had only finished was of water. She had been trained to the ground by Tobirama-sensei, and now she was able to use most of her water jutsu with a single hand seal, except for those with levels above a rank and more. The lightning affinity of her was along ANBU level, and her hand seals were reduced to about 1/3. She had, along with Naruto, tried to learn seal-less ninjutsu, but the attempts had failed due to the jutsu getting destabilized before launching it. Her medium affinity for earth had progressed to the level where she was able to reduce the hand seals to half, and her very minor affinity for fire was along jounin level. Even her goals for ninjutsu in the next 3 years were the same as Enko, Kurenai, and Naruto. get to a level where she could be able to use her elements using only a single hand seal and using two elements simultaneously with using single hand seals with her two hands at the same time, and launch collaboration jutsus. Her taijutsu training was one of the most harshest and frustrating periods she had ever gone through. All the three teachers had their own inputs and several ideas for her taijutsu, but she had informed them about the style she had developed in the future. They had agreed to reform the style after asking her to demonstrate it, but had asked her to learn multiple styles and had even complimented her on breaking the Hyuga tradition of sticking only to Juken. She had learned Goken with the same principles as that of Enko, while she also had begun using a modified version of Juken which was not rigid as the traditional version, but used her limber and lithe body into consideration. She also learned the snake style that Enko had learned, but due to the fact that she had not affiliated herself with the snake summons and had no intention of doing so, she slipped those stances inside her own taijutsu style that she had developed in the future. This style was called by her as the Raging River style and utilized stances from Juken, dances of the Kagai clan, and many others to create a hybrid style that used the same principles as that of the Yuhi clan taijutsu to use weapons and chakra scalpels to injure the enemy, but the main difference was while the Yuhi clan used dance-like movements, Hinata's taijutsu was more along the lines of flowing water. Last but not the least was Naruto, who had grown the most, and even then it was by leaps and bounds. He had been taught several chakra control exercises until now he had finished the following exercises: leaf balancing technique, advanced leaf balancing technique, tree walking exercise technique, advanced tree walking exercise technique, water walking exercise technique, advanced water walking / swimming technique, chakra armor exercise technique, chakra enhanced muscles exercises / senses technique, chakra pulse technique, chakra sonar, advanced form of chakra pulse technique, rapid river walking technique, kunai balancing technique, advanced kunai balancing technique, waterfall walking exercise technique, advanced waterfall walking / swimming technique, rapid river walking / swimming exercise, Saban balancing technique, advanced Saban balancing technique, advanced chakra armor exercise technique. His chakra capacity was at mid-Kage level, while his chakra control was also at mid-Kage level. For Naruto, it was a real accomplishment due to the fact he used at least 100 Kage Bunshin for these exercises, and his chakra capacity was due to his heritage as an Uzumaki and a Jinchuriki on top of that. Hashirama had theorized that due to the Kyuubi, Naruto would possess Bija level reserves at the end of his 5-year training. He had been tutored in all the subjects that included the following: shuriken jutsu, politics, tactics and strategy, deception, body language, torture and interrogation, chakra sensing and emotion sensing, multiple weapon usage, hentai jutsu, seduction, and many other fields. Naruto was exhausted every night, and it was only due to the Kyuubi's regeneration powers that he would be ready for the next day. He had learned 5 different taijutsu styles at the insistence of his teachers. This included the Goken, snake style, hummingbird style, Hashirama's personal taijutsu style, Lady Mito's water fist style. Right now he was learning Tobirama's lightning fist style, and afterwards he was going to learn the Hinata's version of Juken 2. His ninjutsu and elemental manipulation was coming along nicely. His 3 main affinities of earth, water and lightning were all mastered with his ability to launch their jutsus with a single hand seal till he reached a rank jutsus. Above the A rank he needed at least 1/3 hand seals to use the just as effectively, otherwise his attacks used more chakra than required. His medium affinity for wind and fire was at mid-ANBU level, and he had cut the need of hand seals to half of the original limit. He had been able to take several tips from the Uzumaki journals and his undead teachers to learn how to make his jutsus more potent and less time-consuming. Also, his genjutsu training was going along fine till he reached the A rank ones, and he needed time and concentration to use it in the middle of a battlefield. Till B ranks he could use them easily, but afterwards he was practically useless in battle of genjutsu casting. However, like all, he could detect and dispel multiple A rank genjutsus and even several S rank ones. Right now a heated debate was going on between Hinata and Tobirama on the topic Hinata had broached: the use of medical procedures to implant DNA of Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha in the body of Naruto to give him more power. Hinata had theorized and even shown them several scrolls containing the experiments that she had managed to test in the future using the DNA of Naruto, Senju Hashirama, and Uchiha Madara. All she wanted was confirmation by all of them that how the procedure would be undergone, and since he was also an extensive researcher, and would use the bodies of other individuals to further comprehend their abilities and possibly develop new ones. One such case was in Uchiha, whom Tobirama learned the inner workings and mechanics of the Sharingan. This gave Tobirama some expertise in the medical field, and Hinata wanted all of them to supervise the operation. Hashirama was also able to use medical ninjutsu, being able to heal without forming seals, and thus was also included in the overseeing of operation. Hashirama had agreed, but on the condition that all of the teachers and Naruto himself would voluntarily agree to the proposal. Lady Mito was quiet on the issue and was going on the details of the procedure without a word. Tobirama's argument was that Naruto would not be able to get both DNAs assimilated, and even if it does, were there any chances of him manifesting Sharingan? If Naruto manifested Sharingan, then who would teach it to him about the abilities of the said eyes? Because they knew how to counter those eyes and their effects, but how to use them like a master of Sharingan does. Madara Uchiha. Just like I did for you, I have his DNA and can use Ito Tensei to revive him, but in the future when he was revived he looked closer to his prime age and strength. However, I have modified the seals a bit and given them to Lady Mito for cross-checking. If she says okay, we can revive Madara, but with his memories up to the part in his life before you fought, and he went rogue. It is the only way. I know, Lord Second, that you are wary of him, but Naruto knows instruction in the arts of Sharingan from the master of those eyes, and it is Madara and no one else. Pleaded Hinata to Tobirama. Okay, but let us check what your experiments and findings show. Lady Mito, are the seals that Hinata has modified in working order or not? Tobirama asked Lady Mito. Yes, for a few things, but I will change that. Also, the findings of the experiments are written from her future self's memory. I would like to do these tests again with fresh samples. It is fine by you, Hinata, because according to these reports that we are going to have Naruto as weak as a Chunin for the 3 months after the operation, and that is with taking Kyuubi into the account. She replied while Hinata nodded in acceptance. Okay then, it is decided. Till the next week we shall go over the reports and do the experiments, and we shall do the operation if everything goes as planned. Till then, Hinata-san, you can return to the training. We will meet next week. Finished Hashirama and concluded the meeting. All 3 undead teachers sat together to discuss while Hinata went back to where Naruto and the others were practicing ninjutsu along with Kenjutsu. A week later, Uzumaki training area, summoning plane, Yuzushiogaku no Sato, Yuzu no Kuni. Naruto was waiting alone in a room where Hinata and his undead teachers were going to come, and then he was going to undergo medical procedures to get the DNA of first Hokage Hashirama Senju and his arch-rival Madara Uchiha to be implanted in his body. A week before, he had been taken aside by Hinata, who had told him in great detail about her idea and getting the operation done. In the end, Naruto had consented to undergo the operation, but he had asked that whether the entire procedure would not give him any unintended side effects. Both Lady Mito and Lord Second had assured him nothing like that was going to happen, and they had checked the entire procedure. Tobirama had even calculated that the probability of him awakening the Sharingan was less than 40%. Naruto was really happy that he was not going to become a red-eyed, power-hungry bastard in the words of Tobirama himself, not that he did not share that opinion himself. The Uchiha had been one of his main tormentors before the massacre, and they even allowed the drunks and civilians to harm him, and when he defended they would try to pin the blame on him for all the trouble. Naruto, though understanding the need for the operation, was a bit nervous because he was going to be very weak for the next 3 months, and after that he would be trained by an Ito Tensei, Madara Uchiha. That Madara who betrayed Konoha and his childhood friend and rival Hashirama over a set of ideals. Naruto always knew Madara had put the unhealthy fear of Uchiha in the mind of Tobirama, and even Kyuubi would growl and rage in the seal at the mention of his name. But as Hashirama put it, one has to make sacrifices for the small good that comes out of a bad picture. The door opened and his resurrected teachers and Hinata entered the room. All looked a bit grim, but what they were attempting, it was dangerous and never done before. On paper the tests and the calculations might match, but there was a lot of difference in theory and practical. Naruto nodded and lied on the table, while Lady Mito prepared a sedative for him during the operation, and then Naruto knew more except for just the everlasting darkness. 8 weeks later after the operation, Uzumaki training area, summoning plane, Kuchus, Ito Tensei no Jutsu, cried Hinata as she finished the last hand seal and placed her hand on the ground. The coffin in front of her with the kanji of Uchiha written on it lit up with a brilliant white light, causing the seals on it and on the ground to glow brightly. The coffin shuddered as before the fine dust, or ash-like gray substance, poured into the coffin, and then everything stopped. Hinata panted as this heavily modified and severely restrictive Ito Tensei was finished. Even after that much training she was ready to drop dead on the ground to near chakra exhaustion. Her eyes strayed to the massive sealing scroll that was lying open at the ground at her feet. This was a masterpiece Lady Mito had cooked up when they found out that Hinata would be dead of chakra exhaustion if she attempted the use of the variant of the impure world resurrection of Madara without the use of Naruto to provide her chakra. This scroll was a chakra storage and release scroll that contained chakra needed to fully power a Kage for 2 S-rank fights. It was clearly finished after she performed the technique, and she was glad for Lady Mito to provide such an excellent solution for her problem. The coffin opened and Hinata fought back a shudder at seeing the same red samurai armor worn over the body of the resurrected Madara. She stopped herself from moving in front of the ancient Uchiha and blasted him with every technique she had in her arsenal. It seems that I have been summoned back to the living, and by a Hyuga brat no less. Clearly something is very wrong with the picture, as she should not be able to use such a technique, and even I don't remember dying. You girl, tell me, where am I? Madara asked. Hinata clenched her hands as she desperately tried to control herself after hearing the Uchiha leader speak in the same arrogant tone as she remembered from the war. It seems that you have not been fully revived, Madara. I seem to remember that you would sense me immediately if I had been within a few miles of your location. Tell me, was your betrayal your own action or an act done in rage and anger? Asked Hashirama as he stepped in, and with him arrived Tobirama and Lady Mito herself. Madara stiffened at the voice before whirling to face the speaker, and his face contorted into a visage of rage and madness as he nearly jumped to beat down the person he believed to have betrayed him. He stopped himself with difficulty, and then listened to the words of his rival, and on realizing the meaning of the words that Hashirama had spoken caused him to turn around and give a rage-filled glare to the Hyuga who had the audacity to summon him from the dead, and then seal away half his powers. Don't, Madara. We have to talk to for a bit. I had thought that you died at the Valley of the End, but how managed to trick me I don't know. What I now want is that you are going to help us, and if don't help us, we will. I'm sorry, I will make it so, said Lady Mito with a sweet smile on her faces that sent fear crawling up the spines of all the males present. Madara sweated a bit. He knew that the crazy woman must have something up her sleeve. He knew Mito, for the woman was an important part of his defeat at the hand of Hashirama even after he had summoned the Kyuubi in the fight. The woman's prowess with Fuinjutsu was known to be the best in the world, and that was saying something. Okay then, but I must ask why and for whom you need my help. I will not lower myself to help you without you all keeping me in the dark. Tell me and I will answer you on my honor as an Uchiha. He spoke with a grim and serious tone, causing Tobirama to twitch slightly. Lady Mito sighed, and then Hashirama stepped forward and began explaining things in a short summary to his once-called friend, after 2 hours of long explanation. And that is why we had chosen you to help us. Hashirama finished, and then sweat dropped at the sight of Madara, nearly going to faint. Actually, now he looked closely, Madara and others had swirls in their eyes, and what the heck? Why was Tobikuin and his cute little student Hinata sleeping? Madara was now frothing at the mouth and looked ready to fire off some Katan Jutsu. He, Madara Uchiha, never knew that how had he managed to get to bear Hashirama when he was alive. Or maybe the death had made him even more annoying. Well, he was ready to train this Naruto Uzumaki, and if he was not lying, really excited to see what will happen if the student that he was going to train would meet his fully powerful self in the future. Hashirama had told him that he would not remember this time when he would be resurrected again in the future. Oh yes, he was sold on the idea of getting a student, even though he would have to share him with Lady Mito, and take the responsibility of 3 other brats and teaching them Katan Ninjutsu and fire elemental training. Madara Uchiha lived for a good fight, and he really wanted to dance with his student after he managed to train him. Maybe he might teach him some of his Uchiha ways and his own art that he was the master of. The boy was at least 1/4 an Uchiha, and though he had left the clan when he left the village, in reality he had been betrayed by his clansmen first. But first he was going to clear the air between him and Hashirama. Also he had to convince them to allow him more of his power, so that he would properly train the boy. After all, this one was going to be what he had always wanted to leave behind, and he might have failed in that regard if his memories were right. He wanted to leave behind his very own legacy, just like Hashirama and Mito wanted to do, and it seemed that he had chosen the same as those two, the boy Naruto Uzumaki. 2 years later, real-time world, Izumo and Kotetsu, who were standing at the gates and were talking to each other, for the 2 persons known to others as the Eternal Chunin were bored of the guard duty that never seemed to end. The day was clear after a week of heavy rainfall, which was strange at this time of the year but not uncommon in the fire country. Izumo was talking about some woman he had talked with last evening at the bar to Kotetsu, who looked ready to beat his partner with the glares he was shooting Izumo. The reason being that the woman was no one but their ex-teammate who had joined the ANBU after she had become a Chunin and retired after 7 years. The woman Kotetsu had a massive crush on, but he had never the balls to propose to her even after chasing after her for 4 years. The way Izumo was talking, it seemed that he had managed to score with the brunette. The way she was moving and her legs were so graceful. Kotetsu, you should have seen her, man. Hey! You listening to me, Kotetsu, or not? Asked Izumo on seeing that his partner was looking elsewhere. He turned and saw what exactly had captivated his partner. 4 figures could be seen racing towards the Konoha gates, and they seemed to be ANBU with their black cloaks and masks on their faces. But Izumo remembered that there were no missions that were given out, and no ANBU teams that had been sent out, and that included the route. So whoever these were, either they were fakes or from other village. Suddenly, a team of A and B were in front of the gates, forming a perimeter around the booths through which the coming persons would pass through the gates. As soon as the figures arrived through the gate, one of them, a female by her extremely developed body, flung a scroll towards the ANBU leader, and without even seeming to pause, all of them moved towards the Hokage tower. The ANBU had relaxed on seeing the official scroll with the Hokage's insignia on it. As soon as they passed, the others blurred away to tail them, but the speed of the persons who had entered the village wasn't less than high ANBU level. The captain passed the scroll to Kotetsu after reading it, and he spoke into his earpiece. Team, fall back. They are 2 leaf shinobi with their students back from a sanctioned training trip. Move towards the village east to continue perimeter. Bore out. Whose names were on the scroll, Kotetsu? Asked a very curious Izumo to his partner, who looked ready to faint after reading the scroll. After a minute or so of awkward silence, Kotetsu replied in a strangely croaked voice, Yuhi Kurinai, Mitarashi Enko, Hyuga Hinata and Uzumaki Senjin Naruto. Izumo choked on something invisible as he heard the sentence that had been uttered and silently mouthed Senju to his partner, who nodded looking really ill and then grinned a wide mischievous smile and then held out his hand and spoke happily, You owe me 5,000 yen. I won the bet. Pay up now, Kotetsu. Kotetsu glared his friend and said, Not now. In the evening when we are free of this duty. Izumo nodded and then started humming a song. So, did you see the legs on the 2 women, huh, Kotetsu? He asked after a while. Shut up! Izumo replied in annoyed kotetsu. Sarutobi Hiruzen was not a ninja who could be surprised easily. After he had dealt with his old rival and friend Danzo and pulled his act together, he had taken the reins of village with iron hands, and Konoha had prospered once again under his rule. Even his old teammates Koharu and Hamura had supported him fully after seeing how much they had been damaging the village by their useless agenda. He had changed the routines of the ninjas and made several changes to the ninja lifestyle. The only thing he had not fully managed to control was the influence of the civilian council. Though they had been managed to hold a bit of power, but that small amount of power was enough to give headaches to him when they went out of their way to cause problems for the military. As his most trusted and capable soldiers stood before, Sarutobi gazed upon them with pride. They all were Danzo's root shinobi that were now under his command. After 3 to 6 months of breaking the robotic tendencies and the seals that were on them, root shinobi were allowed to join the village. It was difficult, and he had to even recall Jiraiya for help. But he could not deny the efficiency of Danzo's training and command structure. He cleared his throat. All of the ANBU stood at attention and waited for his commands. He inwardly smiled to himself. Order, discipline, and respect, that's how the hierarchy in Konoha was built nowadays. The chain of command was direct with no possible circumventions. As of now, we have 4 persons in ANBU attire that passed the gates this morning. As Bor told me, and as the scroll suggests, they are some persons that were sent on a private training by me. They have yet to report to me till now, but that should not allow you to panic. However, I have gotten some intelligence from them that was dropped this very morning by a hawk. Teams 5, 8, and 10 are to be deployed at the borders of IWA. There are reports of a mercenary group working there under the Tsuchikage. It is reported the ninjas are of S rank. I want to know about their movements and their plans. No engagement with them, this a recon-only mission. I want all of you to put in a good amount of effort. Am I clear? Hi, Hokage-sama, several voices chorused at once. The ANBU vanished in a puff of smoke. Sarutobi smiled to himself and sat back in his chair before he spoke seemingly to the air. I know you are there. Why do you linger in the shadows? The air in the office rippled around to show 4 figures that were reported to have passed the gates in the morning. Both of the Eternal Chunins had reported about the pressure that seemed have sensed by them when these 4 had passed the gate, and Hiruzen himself was no slouch in the sensory ninjutsu. As he could sense when they dropped their camouflage technique, all the 4 figures had high and potent chakra. In all, they gave an air of seasoned ninja ranging from high A level to nearly mid-Kage, or S level. He was floored, as he had never expected this much increase or growth in the potential of these 4. Not that he had no faith in them all, but he had not expected them to increase this much till they were all elite jounin or more. The chakra he could sense were very tightly controlled and seemed to be restrained by all, but he was certain that all of them had crossed mid-ANBU level, and that too in 2 years of training. He made a mental note to ask about the training, as this was very good for the village if shared. However, one thing he noticed was that all of them were wearing dark black cloaks with their hoods up, so he couldn't see any identifying features of them. The cloaks seemed to have been seen by him before, but he couldn't place their origin. He looked again and was suddenly struck by the fact that the cloaks seemed to suck the light from around them, deepening the shadows and allowing them to appear as if their shadows had been melded into the cloaks. Suddenly he was struck by a long memory from the time when he was a young teen with his teachers Lord Hashirama and Lord Tobarama, with Lady Mito also present with them. Shadow cloaks, he whispered, stunned. These cloaks were a personal creation of Lady Mito's grandfather, who was an accomplished seal master and a brilliant inventor and a scientist. He, along with his summons of the Karasu, Crow, clan, had created a masterpiece of cloaks with using seals with the molted feathers of the crows to form a literal camouflage cloth that could, with the effects of seals and users' chakra and will, would allow them to mimic the surroundings. But they were not called shadow cloaks because of that, but due to the fact that these cloaks could literally allow the user who had been synced with these cloaks to allow them to drop them into their own shadow, or the shadows of any kind, just like the Nara clan could do, but with a lot of practice. In fact, Nara clan had the idea from this very cloak for their hiding in the shadows technique that required very fine control and concentration. Also, these cloaks had several seals hidden in them to make them virtually silent and able to hide from all types of detection. Since Hiruzen had detected them with his sensory technique, it meant that the seals had been deactivated. It has been a while, hasn't it, Naruto-kun, Hinata-san, Enko-san, and Kurinai-san? Can you remove the hoods, please? I would like to see what changes have happened to you all over a period of 2 years that you all were away from the village. I can sense the chakra flowing inside you and can honestly say that I have been surprised by the growth all of you have out there. It seems that you live up to your name of the professor, old man. It is nice to see you too. Came a male voice as cold as the dead of winter as all of them removed their hoods and the masks they were wearing. Sarutobi Hiruzen was a good judge of character, and just by looking at someone, he was able to piece together much about that person. All of them, especially Naruto, had become extremely beautiful and in Naruto's case handsome. Their faces seemed to have been carved by angels themselves. Every one of their features, their movements, even the way that they now carried themselves held within them an air of regality and grace, as though each one of them was some sort of nobility or royalty. It was then truly he noticed Naruto's eyes, and was taken aback by the sight. His eyes were cold indigo, twin chips of ice that burned darkly in the cool air. It was said that eyes are windows to a man's soul, and yet in the eyes of his pseudo-grandchild, he could read nothing. They were guarded and harsh, revealing nothing of the boy's heart that lay beyond. There was only emptiness, a void stretching before him, threatening to consume him in its freezing grasp. The blonde who now watched him and the ANBU with marked disinterest, which was cold and aloft. It was though all of creation mattered not to him. He watched the world behind those cold and dangerous blue eyes, missing nothing, but liking nothing. The blonde child reminded Sarutobi of Itachi in so many ways. But there was some difference, as he noticed. Naruto looked like he was someone the third Hokage could tell right then and there that he should not mess with. The boy had similar blonde lock to his own father, but, though the spikes were notably subdued, his face, though still young, was already taking on a handsome appearance, and in a few years, his grandchild would be quite the heartthrob. Next to Naruto was a beautiful and exotic-looking woman who looked like some divine art come to life. Creamy white skin, with dark, lush black-colored hair that had a beautiful wave to it. Her figure was more like that of one seen in fashion magazines. Her long legs accentuating her already lavish curves and of course her eyes, her dazzling ruby-red eyes. Sarutobi hadn't thought that Kurenai could get even more beautiful, and but this woman would shatter all the female pride of his kunoichis. He made a point not to send her on any missions regarding female nobles, as he did not want a cat fight regarding the women of nobles getting jealous over her exotic beauty. Next to Kurenai was Anko, looking the same as ever with her violet hair and a short ponytail, and light brown eyes. She was wearing a pair of shin guards, a mesh suit, a miniskirt and a tan trench coat. There was something else that had changed. Hiruzen felt her reserves and was surprised that her chakra had no taint of the curse mark in her chakra. He looked at her and said, "It seems that you have lost your mark." "Haven't you, Anko?" "Yes." The process was long and painful, but it was removed in the end. "I will explain it to you later. But I have to warn you, don't tell anyone about it, for I don't want Orochimaru knowing about it, and attacking me on how I managed to get it off me. When he attacks me the next time, I will not be helpless and would take good care of him," she replied in her boisterous voice while chuckling to herself. Hiruzen cracked a smile at that and mentally observed the behavior with the girl who before would have shouted the news from the top of the Hokage monument complete, while dancing along. The trip has made them more mature, I guess. But the only thing that worries me is the cold dead look in the eyes of Naruto. I will ask him about the trip later, he thought to himself. Then Hinata spoke up, and the Sandaime was broken out of his thoughts. "Hokage-sama, Naruto-kun and I would like to ask you about the Uzumaki's clan no mask hall located on the outskirts of the village, which has been abandoned. Since the mask hall is a part of the Uzumaki clan heritage, we would like to get the deeds for the forest area around the radius of 5 kilometers from the temple. We both have decided to create a clan compound with the temple as the base. I know that such things that need permission from the daimyo, and we both have gotten it while coming here to Konoha." Making his eyes widen in surprise and giving a little bit of humor at the situation. Hiruzen was totally tied up in military matters and the fact that there were several missing ninjas vanishing from the elemental nations, especially around the rice country. He suspected that his old ex-student and trader of the leaf, Orochimaru, had a hand in this. He had gotten other troubling reports that the Tsuchikage was amassing weapons and getting academy curriculum to increase. Kiri had fallen into a civil war with the Mizukage declaring war on his people with bloodlines getting executed. He had no time to deal with the headaches back at home as the foreign front was on constant upheaval. "Okay, but I will first check the deeds. Also, your father Hayashi-san has talked with the fire daimyo and gave both of you his blessings, even though the elders of your clan, especially your grandfather, raised quite a fuss over it. However, seeing the scroll and the signatures of your ancestor made them all shut up, and the terms were quite enough to make them steam. However, there is a message from Hayashi which is, the white lotus is free but the vultures do not like the swirl. I hope you understand what he was talking about. On the other hand, Hanabi has been made the heiress after your departure. The elders of your clan wasted no time in trying to demand that on your return, you would be branded with the caged seal. This situation nearly resulted in a civil war in your clan, but the fire daimyo was informed of the situation along with Lord Mifune. 2 of the elders were executed on charges of treason and other were given a fair warning, resulting in your victory." Naruto nodded while both Anko and Kurenai smiled. Hinata giggled into her sleeve. "Lord Daimyo had told us about that when we visited him. Here, this scroll details all the information you want, while this second scroll here contains all the formalities for the land transfer. You might want to know that we are going to use heavy ninjutsu for remodeling, so ask your village barrier team to keep the barrier protection to the maximum. Also, I might use that chakra so the warning is in advance. We don't want the panic of October 10 to appear again," spoke Naruto while handing over 2 scrolls. Sarutobi had narrowed his eyes at the mention of heavy ninjutsu and Kyuubi's chakra, but thought better to ask now. All of them had just come from a heavy training and they would surely need to rest. The rest of the questions could wait till the next meeting. He also had to test both Naruto and Hinata on the results of their training. He spoke his thoughts and Anko replied, "Lord Hokage, we both would rate these 2 as elite jounin and almost all the fields of shinobi, but we can offer you a better deal. Why don't we test our students against a team of ANBU say 2 days afterwards? Till then we can wash off the tiredness and also create the clan compound. Also, I would like to ask you the permission of being Naruto's guardian. Kurenai wants to take Hinata under her wing. I hope you understand that we have formed nice bonds while we were away and consider the request. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded to himself as he went over Anko's proposal. This was good, as he always had wanted someone to keep watch over both Hinata and Naruto, but could not do so due to interference of the civilian council. Now that he thought about it, this was a golden opportunity for him. Okay, but I will give you the decision 2 days later. Now go, and have a nice day. It was nice seeing you all, especially you Naruto-kun. Maybe someday we can sit and discuss more about this trip. And happy rebuilding. I will inform the barrier teams about that. Goodbye. Naruto, with a soft smile to his face, spoke a bit warmly, a change from the dead ice voice of his he had used till now. I would like that, Gigi. Thank you for your help and do take care. With that said, all of them put their masks and hoods back, and one by one they all sank into their shadows that vanished. Sarutobi lied back in his chair before he noticed the paperwork, though it was far reduced than what he used to do, but he was still detested it. He ignored the piles in front of him and pulled out an orange book, and for the next few hours the only sounds coming from the office were perverted giggling of the third Hokage. Uzumaki's clan no mask hall. Kanehigakure no Sato, outskirts. The shadows rippled around the entrance of the Uzumaki temple, and 4 figures jumped out of the shadows like dew droplets on a leaf. The entire forest was silent as the 4 figures removed their hoods, showing their masked faces to the world. Can't we just remove the henge now? I feel like we are on secret espionage mission. And why we have to hide our appearance now? We did not do so in Yuzu. Asked a sultry female voice identified by a woman wearing a modified ANBU-type mask depicting a snake on it. Hebe, snake, you know why we can't do so. And we are not talking about it till Usagi, rabbit, make sure that the entire area is empty and free of bugs and other monitoring devices. Then we shall talk, and I think to make you understand that we can't talk about it in the open, scolded a woman wearing a white mask with distinctive crimson streaks on it with the shape of a peacock. Area clear. We have not been followed till now. Let us do this. We have half an hour before the barrier team is informed, and they raise the barrier so that we can do the remodeling. Shall we do this, Naruto-kun? Asked the young girl wearing the rabbit mask. Not now, Hinata. First let us enter the temple. I will send some Kage Bunshin to plant the barrier and detection seals and to do some recon of the area. We need to make the entire area is marked completely. The last of them, a boy wearing a black mask with depiction of Okami, wolf, on it spoke. Hinata nodded, and all of them moved towards the abandoned temple of the Uzumaki clan. As soon as they entered the temple, Naruto looked out at the empty clearing and created 30 highly charged shadow clones, and all of them departed for the tasks without him speaking. As Naruto's Kage Bunshin left the temple, they spread out, and by the time they had stopped moving after moving more than 5 kilometers from the point of origin, each clone stood in front of a tree. From above, the formation of the clones would have looked like a circle with 30 points placed at regular intervals. Moving in sync, each clone held up a finger and forged a small vivid blue chakra blade. Together, they began to carve seals into the trunks of the trees they stood in front of. Having already given the important all steps for securing the clearing and the area they needed to the clones, Naruto waited for 15 minutes and then sat down on the floor back at the Uzumaki temple and assumed a meditative pose to prepare himself for the next step. Back at their positions, his clones were hard at work inscribing seals in increasingly complex patterns on 10 trees. Meanwhile, Naruto had begun his own portion of the task. Very carefully he gathered and molded a huge amount of chakra and kept a firm hold on it. Reaching out with his senses, he examined the chakra of the trees, plants, and animals around him, essentially getting a read on the exact frequency, if you will, of the background chakra of the clearing. This technique had been a result of his training with Lord Hashirama and Lord Tobirama to learn the true art of sensory ninjutsu, unlike the modern ninjas did using shortcuts and learning only the basics. Then with absolute focus he began to mutate the nature of the chakra he had molded. Step by step, the chakra began to change from one that was unique to Naruto until finally it was indistinguishable from the chakra that saturated the surroundings. And right in time too, for he sensed through the link he shared with all his clones that they had just finished inscribing the seals. Now came the next and one of the most difficult step. Reaching out again, he grasped all 30 chakra links to his shadow clones and gave the shadow clones the go-ahead to do their parts. With the active chakra link between themselves, the clones were able to act in sync. Simultaneously, they molded all their remaining chakra into neutral-natured chakra, placed their hands on the seals they had just carved and activated the seals they had just carved, making sure to halt the activation process just before its conclusion, essentially leaving the seals in a state of suspended animation, much like drawing a circle and stopping just before closing it off. Now for the most delicate part of the entire procedure, with his clones' minds right there with him, Naruto portioned the carefully prepared chakra into 30 equal parts, and after making sure that all his clones were ready, sent them out along the chakra links, with each chakra packet traveling at a speed that ensured that all the clones received them at the same time. As the clones felt the chakra packets arrive, without interrupting the flow, they fed the chakra into the suspended seals, and just as the last of the incoming chakra was sucked into the seal, they closed the loop, completing the charging and activation of the seals. Owing to the neutral nature of the chakra used, No ninja sensed the chakra spike and the hidden nature of the area needed that ensured that the resulting light show went unseen. After the chakra eruption had died down, Naruto dismissed all his clones. Getting up out of his meditative post, Naruto probed the newly made barrier around the clearing he was in, checking to make sure that all the features he had intended were present in the barrier and that nothing went wrong. He was satisfied with what he found. Now, no one but him and those he would synchronize with the seals personally would be able to find any part of the area he just sealed, and even those who might have known about the existence in the past would just conclude that the trees must have regrown after they realized that they can't find the entire area just like it was in the core area of the Forest of Death. After all, who knows what the trees grown by the Shodaime Hokage are capable of. With all that done, Naruto could then get around to finally get to remodeling the area as they wanted and as discussed by him with his teachers before he left Yuzu. He stood back up and then nodded to others. All of them nodded back, and then they all began removing their masks and the cloaks. Naruto waited for a moment before creating 50 clones and leaving them to scout the area for training grounds that would be used for proper training in the use of the 5 elements and their various combinations. With that done, he prepared to return to his companions and then to get some rest. Now that he had taken care of all the necessary preparations, they could start having fun. Just before closed, the door of the temple watched the clones disappear into the woods and mused absently to himself that he should build a blacksmith's forge in one of the many clearings in the area he had sealed to make custom weapons. And then, with not as much as a whisper, he turned around and was gone back into the depths of the mask hall. All of them looked at each other, and then simultaneously raised their hands in ram's seal and muttered a soft "Kai." The result was 4 different persons were present in the room, and their forms rippled to show their true appearances. Kurenai Yuhi, the last member of the Yuhi clan of Whirlpool. Yuhis were primarily a clan of assassins, and unlike most kunoichi, the Yuhi clan back in the times of Warring Clans era when they were living in the Whirlpool before moving out and settling in Konoha, were partners of the Uzumaki clan as their primary retainers and often worked in secret with them as their hidden hand in the village, the one of the last ninja clans in the old country of Yuzu. She looked like a goddess of pure beauty among mortals. Her black, slightly wavy hair flowed gracefully to the small of her back and framed her face. Cherry red pouty lips and a pair of the most soul-piercing seductive eyes that could possibly exist. They were an enchanting shade of crimson like her name Sake, and the pupils had a ring of light red around them, but it had nothing to do with them being a dojutsu, but it was simply to increase her beauty and give her an untamed exotic look that would drive any man crazy. One gaze from her and most men would now be putty in her hands if they saw her new and definitely dangerous look. Her body was a magnificent specimen of the female body, with an ample single E-cup bosom, small waist, round and bulging buttocks and wide hips. To put that body into the white and crimson dress she now wore that was modified to expose her cleavage and shortened so that her thighs were always in sight was almost sinful. To top it all off, she wore laced-up sandals reaching her calves. Her beauty was as deadly as a tiger, with her twin blades each a foot and a half in length from tip to tip and curved with an ornately crafted handles. She had taken up Kenjutsu after she mastered the taijutsu of the Yuhi clan, and incorporated the use of daggers, kunai, saban and chakra scalpels to land strikes on the opponent's nerves, muscles and the blood circulatory system. All in all, she was a very dangerous ninja who had embraced the more underhanded path of being kunoichi. She was a trickster and a seducer. She took a lot of time in learning to properly learn the Kenjutsu technique of her technique, and as a result of this training, Kurenai had a spectacular control of her ability which allowed her to control the poison in such a way that she could poison a man with just a kiss and still not let him die. She had finished her elemental manipulation of fire, wind, lightning and water elements, and was at high ANBU level, reaching almost borderline S rank in ninjutsu. Her chakra capacity was now nearly low Sannin level. Her chakra control had reached to mid Sannin level, and she had almost a true genjutsu mistress. All she needed now was more experience, and refining her control over her techniques. She was now able to use all her elements using only a single hand seal till mid-A rank techniques were concerned, and was still learning to use 2 elements simultaneously with using single hand seals with her 2 hands at the same time. Enko Mitarashi had light brown pupilless eyes and black hair which had a blue tint to them, giving them almost a violet shade, which was styled as always in a short, spiky, fan ponytail. She was wearing a dark metal mesh bodysuit that stretched from her neck to her mid-thighs, showcasing her lush, womanly and hot, sinful figure. The mesh suit was covered by a gray overcoat with purple inseam and also wore a black mini skirt just barely above indecent, and that too stretching the limits of it. Her ensemble was finished with dark gray wrist and shin guards. She too was wearing high laced-up sandals like Kurenai, but they were black in color. Her body had matured in last 2 years, and after removal of the curse seal, her body had been allowed to fully develop. Her tits had reached to nearly a whopping E-cup, and her waist had become narrow, giving her an hourglass figure almost like Kurenai. Her ass was more plump and a bit more massive than Kurenai's, but whereas Kurenai was more like an exotic fruit that drew everyone like bees to honey, Enko oozed nothing but seduction and sultriness, like a succubus on a hunt. After she had gotten her curse seal removed, her chakra levels had reached up to mid-Kage level, but now she was high Kage level. Her chakra control had reached to high Sannin. Her taijutsu was at mid-Sannin level in the true snake style, and in the Goken. Enko's 2 main affinities of fire, and Earth had been mastered, and now she could use only one hand seal to unleash any technique up to mid-S rank. Her minor affinity to wind was at low Sannin level. However, she was capable of using single hand seals with her two hands at the same time to launch collaboration jutsus. She also had trained with Lady Mito in the use of katana and Atonement simultaneously. In the art of kenjutsu she was high NBU level only, and had vowed to learn and master her two weapons. Hinata Hyuga had become one of the most beautiful women any of them had ever seen. Her body had become more mature after she had come back from 6 months of training with Lady Mito, and her body had been changed. Her breast had grown larger, her hips had curved. She gained a thinner curved waist, and her legs were longer and sleeker too. In short, she almost looked like the perfect supermodel. After her seduction and hentai jutsu training, she had become more bolder and outgoing and even began flirting with Naruto. Both the women knew they had a slight crush over Hinata and Naruto after they had matured during the training trip, and wherever Hinata went during their return trip, every male onlooker stopped and stared at the sublime creature, whose silky dark hair with a blue tint to them fell down past her shoulders to the small of her back just above her perfect ass. The way she moved her hips was a seductive, almost hypnotic way, as if to say you know you want it. Hinata had truly started on the path of seducing Naruto during the end of their 4th year in the training plane, but the boy was still a bit dense towards her feelings for him. And her eyes had become a lovely shade of lavender that melted anyone's heart when she smiled at them. What both Anko and Kurenai did not know was the fact, due to the secret training in pure chakra that both of them had done with Hashirama-sensei, they both had matured early and their bodies had developed to be more beautiful, yet deadly and stronger than others. Hinata was now at mid-ANBU level with her chakra capacity, and her chakra control was at low Sannin level. She had mastered the two main affinities of water and lightning. She had been trained to the ground by Tobirama-sensei, and now she was able to use most of her water jutsu with a single hand seal except for those with levels above mid-S rank. The lightning affinity of her was along low Sannin level, and her hand seals were reduced to about 4 or 5 for most of her techniques. Her medium affinity for earth had progressed to the high ANBU to borderline Sannin level, where she was able to reduce the hand seals to less than 10, and her very minor affinity for fire was along high ANBU level after their training with Madara Uchiha. Like both her friends, her ninjutsu was the same as that of Anko, Kurenai, and Naruto, a level where she was able to use her elements using only a single hand seal and using two elements simultaneously with using single hand seals with her two hands at the same time, and launch collaboration jutsus. Her own taijutsu style that she had developed in the future was mastered by her, and she was truly at the level of Mito Guy when he was without his weights. This style was called by her as the Raging River style and utilized stances from Juken, dances of the Kagai clan, and many others to create a hybrid style that used the same principles as that of the Yuhi clan taijutsu to use weapons and chakra scalpels to injure the enemy, but the main difference was while the Yuhi clan used dance-like movements, Hinata's taijutsu was more along the lines of flowing water. She was able to go toe-to-toe with both Anko and Kurenai in taijutsu, and her medical training was at mid-jounin levels. Hinata had also taken up archery on the insistence of Lady Mito, who had told her that she would be a very good long-range combatant, and her skills gave her a small amount of invulnerability. How can you attack a person if that person has the ability to kill you from over half a kilometer? With or without her Byakugan, Hinata had been truly dangerous foe. Adding a truly long-range speciality added a whole new level of possibility to Hinata's arsenal. Lady Mito had also told her that if Hinata reached a level where she could shoot targets moving at low to mid-Sannin speed while herself running at those speeds, she would teach Hinata herself on Mayatan, Yin-Yang release, that she had mastered in her later life. When most people talked about the Byakugan, they mentioned a user's ability to see nearly 360-degree, ability to see through surfaces, and observational skills in that order. Hinata's Byakugan also seemed to allow an almost preternatural eye for detail at extreme ranges. Lavender-eyed Hinata could put any throwing weapon on target 10 times out of 10 from 50 meters away, and do the same at 100 meters if she used chakra to enhance the strength of her throws when she had reached the age of 7. With the Byakugan and her own eyesight strengthened with the use of pure chakra, Hinata never missed ever. After the days and weeks of practice time, she pegged a butterfly from nearly a kilometer away. Lady Mito was convinced on the fact that the idea was fully intended for Byakugan users like Hinata who diversified and broke traditions, instead of allowing them to rust and become complacent. It took enhancing her arms with chakra to draw the practice bow properly, and she wouldn't easily be able to make a shot like that in a forest, but Hinata was getting some fiendish ideas when she thought about enchanting the bow and the arrows that she used to be soundless, unbreakable and the like using seals. From the looks of her sensei, Lady Mito was having ideas of her own. Lady Mito had Hashirama make a special wooden bow set consisting of 3 different types of bows and several thousand arrows using his own Mokutan jutsu, but enhanced each and every one of them with using his sage mode. The resulting masterpieces were an art of their own. Hinata had named them as sage bows in the honor of the skill and strength possessed by each of the bows. Each bow was an ornately crafted bow in the shape of falcons or birds of prey. The arrows were divided into several categories. Lady Mito had spent 2 months applying seals to both the arrows and bows. Each of the 3 bows were made to be nigh indestructible, silent, and being able to summon to her on using her chakra like a summoning. The arrows were made to be of multiple variety from exploding, ninjutsu release to capable of unleashing a fog of poison. The entire project had taken 3 to 4 months, but the results were worth it. The bows could take direct attacks from any type of chakra nature, and if damaged as Hashirama demonstrated using his Sage mode to scratch the bows, they were self-repairing. The arrows were a bit more complex, but the most exotic ones had reverse summoning seals on them. A different Naruto stood still, waiting patiently for his clones to dispel with news of the seals he had applied just now were working perfectly while they tested them and the defenses, while 2 other clones were sent to check whether the barrier team had been informed or not. The difference between the old Naruto and this one was significant to say the least. He was wearing a black leather NBU pants and a mesh shirt combination complete with distinctive long sleeves. His forearms were covered by guards similar to ankle, but his were a bright crimson and had 2 symbols on them side by side of the Uzumaki clan and the Senju clan. He was wearing an armor just like Madara Uchiha, but his was pale blue with distinctive pattern of gray streaks in the form his clans on both front and back. The armor was with thick black streaks running along the arms, chest, back, and thighs in the same places as Madara's did, i.e. armor that covered his chest, the sides of his thighs that conjoined to cover his crotch, and top half of his arms that extended upward to cover the sides of his face, with the sleeves of his shirt rolled up to the mid part of his forearms. He had black gloves on along with black boots. He also wore a mantle under his leg armor. He'd grown to fill out his clothes nicely over the years, though it was hard to tell just by looking at him. To most he would look quite skinny, but the appearance was deceptive. A trained eye would notice that there were plenty of extremely strong muscles on his body, as each one of them were lean and extremely taut. Whenever he moved, his muscles rippled and flexed with each movement. His body was built for speed, flexibility, and acrobatics. There wasn't an ounce of bulk or wasted weight on it. Unlike the henge, he was noticeably pale, almost pure white, a consequence of spending almost all his time in the last 2 years, real-world time, in the training plane and using the perfect chakra extensively. Also, the DNA implants of Lord Hashirama and Madara Uchiha had some physical manifestations. His usual pale blonde hair had grown thicker and wilder with deep red, almost crimson color seeping into their roots. His features had become more angular, and he even took on Madara's jawline. To him, his most significant change had been his eyes. Eyes, which were once a brilliant and shining sapphire, were now cold glaciers. Though his eyes retained that ocean blue color, but where the old Naruto's eyes were simply striking, his present eyes were as cold as ice with a sharp, calculating gaze that attested to a cunning mind. The henge's trademark spiky blonde hair were also gone. Instead, the hair were grown out and tied back and loosely in a ponytail. The blonde and red hair and pale face would make him look stand out on the streets of Konoha. His appearance was simply exotic to say the least. His loose blonde bangs framed a handsome face that was starting to adopt the first lines of adulthood, losing all of the youthful roundness that characterized most youth. The only real similarity this Naruto shared with his clone was the whiskers marks on their cheeks, but they too were fading and had become very thin and hard to make out at a glance. However, they reappeared in more feral manner whenever he was using Kyuubi's chakra above 2 tails. He had learned and mastered 8 different taijutsu styles at the insistence of his teachers. This included the Goken, snake style, hummingbird style, Hashirama's personal taijutsu style, Lady Mito's water fist style, Tobirama's lightning fist style, Hinata's version of Juken, and last but not the least the Uchiha Madara's personal taijutsu style. His chakra capacity was at Bija level, while his chakra control was also at mid-Kage level. For Naruto, it was a real accomplishment due to the fact he used at least 100 Kage Bunshin for these exercises, and his chakra capacity was due to his heritage as an Uzumaki and a Jinchuriki. On top of that, Hashirama-sensei had been right in the regard of his chakra control training, along with Lady Mito's advice on his negative emotion sensing. His ninjutsu and elemental manipulation was at mid to high Sannin level already. His 3 main affinities of earth, water, and lightning were all mastered with his ability to launch their jutsus with a single hand seal till he reached mid-S rank jutsus. Above the high A rank, he needed at least 1/3 hand seals to use the just as effectively, otherwise his attacks used the normal chakra as required. He had been able to take several tips from the Uzumaki journals and his undead teachers to learn how to make his jutsus more potent and less time-consuming. His genjutsu at high A rank to borderline S rank. He could detect and dispel multiple A-rank genjutsus and even several S-rank ones. When Naruto had been trained, he was given his very own sickle and chain and could go toe-to-toe with his Uchiha-sensei within months of his training, when it was sickle and chain only. Lady Mito had personally given him a katana she had forged in the training plane. It had been an old blade called as Miramesa, but Lady Mito had used chakra metal and reforged the old katana and inscribed several invisible seals on it, including a seal that caused the blade to vibrate at insane speeds, increasing its cutting power 100-fold, and could channel any type of chakra nature through itself, further increasing its lethality. His Kenjutsu at the level of low-level Sannin and Madara Uchiha had nearly lost an arm in a battle. He was now training to learn to use both weapons at the same time, but he had made very little progress on that front. It seems that the barrier team has raised the strength of the village. My clone has just dispelled We can now begin on remodeling the land before I begin the construction of the clan compound. However, we will need the help of Hashirama-sensei as my Mokutan Jutsu is not very advanced. Hinata, will you be able to summon him again or shall I do it? Asked Naruto in his usual ice-cold whisper. No need, Naruto-kun. I will be happy to help as it is going to be our own clan house after we marry. Or do you not find me beautiful enough? She asked while using the dreaded puppy eye jutsu, making her eyes big and watery. Naruto kept his deadpan stare at her, making her visibly pout, and she stuck out her tongue in a rare show of childishness. Both Kurenai and Anko smiled at her rare show of innocence, which was what these two deserved, not the fact that they were making decisions like seasoned war veterans. Even the ever-stoic Naruto gave a minimalistic smile, just a turn of the corners of his lips that drew the attention away from his piercing blue eyes. Hinata stared at Naruto as it was rare for him to showcase emotions this freely without any care of the world, even though it was the bare minimum. She sometimes cursed herself and wallowed in guilt of the decision of making Naruto grow up fast and take away his naive view of the world, with which was what she had fallen in love with him in the first place. But it was that or allow him to become a doormat for the others who would simply use him and then throw him away like trash. And she had chosen to make their own happy memories later in the life when the storms that were going to plague the shinobi world were just waiting to unleash around the corner. Anko-san, come with me. Kurenai-san, you may join us, or would you like to stay with Hinata and watch over her for me? Asked Naruto with his usual monotone, all traces of emotion vanishing, making it feel like a dead breeze in harsh winter. Kurenai simply smiled her predatory smile like a succubus on a hunt and then spoke in a low husky voice. I will stay with Hinata if you don't mind, Uzumaki-kun. I have to ask her a few things myself. I will join you later on. What I have told you to call me Naruto-kun. It is either Anko-chan or Anko for you. You don't have to be so formal with me. Of course, I am just itching to try out a few jutsu. I have been bored the entire way back to the village. You know, this seems awfully like you are trying to take me away so that you can have my body to ravish. Is that why you are asking me to go with you, Naruto-kun? Do you want your sweet, innocent Anko-chan to be your first? She then blew him a kiss and resisted the urge to grin at the challenging scowl that formed the Hyuga's face. God's messing with her is so fun, and I have to admit she is quite a ferocious tiger. But I must admit I am attracted to him, and I won't allow any chance to go out my hands. But if I have to be with him, I will have to fix that icy exterior of his. Anko thought to herself while remembering all the training she had done in seduction and hentai jutsu. Naruto didn't even blink and walked off with Anko grumbling after him about young, good-looking studs who were too emotionless for their own good. Hinata glaring daggers at Anko's back, willing herself to incinerate the woman with her eyes alone. Kurenai watched them go with a barely concealed amusement, and then turned a predatory eye on Hinata, who mentally gulped at the pure sinful look on her one-time mentor's face. Hinata-san, she purred in her husky voice, sending delightful shivers down the young girl's spine. We are going to have a talk. Naruto walked outside with Anko following him, pouting at the cold guy that Naruto had begun using around the end of second year in their training. She never voiced it out loud, but she missed the old but carefree Naruto who would always smile and freely express himself. Naruto had suddenly gone one day without telling any of them for training with both Hashirama-sama and Lady Mito for 3 months, and when he returned, he had changed a lot. He had seemed lost like a leaf in a wind and had refused to talk to any one of them except for his teachers, and even then it was in yes or no. 3 of their senseis had known but never spoken a word about what had happened with Naruto, though Tobirama-sensei had been a bit grim after Naruto's return. All 3 of them had discussed what had happened, as none of their teachers would say even a word, though Hinata had an inkling of what might have happened, but she refused to tell them anything, saying that it was Naruto's choice to tell them about his change. Naruto stopped after moving through few paces around the Uzumaki temple. He could feel the turmoil that was currently engulfing Anko, as his negative emotion sensing ability was always active as a result of his training. He knew what Anko was thinking, but the truth was he did not want to burden anyone with his pain, and what he almost thought was the betrayal of the highest kind. Flashback start. The vast emptiness in front of him was a bit overwhelming. Both Lady Mito and Hashirama-sensei had spoken that it was necessary for him to do this, and after a few weeks of debate with himself, he had agreed. Though he suspected it was his stubborn aspect of him, the one that coined his never-give-up attitude, had managed to screw him one final time in the end. I am speaking from experience, Lady Mito replied after a moment of his query that was truly necessary as they approached an end to the dark corridor they were traveling through, which ended in the vast empty plain in front of them. No matter how much you wishes for deny it or hope to return to the simplistic naive view you once held, Hashirama knows that it is not going to happen if the desire is only one-sided. His own history with Madara is proof of that. With doubt comes anger, and that was what anyone would have planned to exploit to escape. It has nearly worked every time too. When the seal is loosened the seal in the future using the key Minato left for your seal. I have myself just barely managed to restrain the QB long enough to retighten the restrictions on its chakra during my trial. Although yours is different due to the fact that the Yondaime still left the seal in a weakened state. I don't know what he was thinking, and as a result, Naruto and Yondaime both created me. A fourth voice called towards them as the door at the end of the passageway swung open. Naruto gasped as a person looking exactly like him to the very last detail, stood in the doorway, although he had red pupils surrounded by darkness. Although perhaps creating isn't the right word exactly, more like gave me enough chakra for me to manifest. Both Lady Mito and Hashirama-sensei nodded at him before saying, yes, although what you hope to achieve now is impossible to say. The dark version of Naruto smirked as he said, my dream is the same. I'm going to become the real Naruto, and then I'm going to teach the stinking village a lesson for all the hard times and pains they've given to me. All three of them shared a look before Lady Mito said, Yami Naruto, you don't. Shut up, the dark aspect shouted, causing the redhead to take a step back. You weren't there. You have no idea of the shitty life I had. Sorry, we have had, but I will rectify it soon. Do you really think that smiling buffoon you met is who your legacy really is? He's just a mask that became real. Seeing her descendant's face twisted in such a furious veneer as it spit its ire at her had caused tears to appear in the woman's eyes as she said, I so never wanted a child to bear the burden put on Yu to give you. But you weren't, the dark Naruto said coldly, each word layered in unforgiving ice, the words stabbing Lady Mito like a knife, making her wonder if that was how her descendant had truly felt about her and her legacy. She began to hug herself as she felt on the verge of sobbing. Hashirama placed a comforting hand on her shoulder though as he said, don't let its words bother you. It is merely acting as it was wished to be. But this is why Naruto has been so withdrawn lately. It is merely using his own doubts against him. If that is so very cold of you, Hashirama, the dark Naruto said, there was a time when you would have called me the real Naruto. But you aren't, Hashirama replied calmly. You're merely a construct of his negative emotions given a semblance of life due to his and Kyuubi's chakra and are no doubt using the platform that had been sustained by the weak seal to maintain your existence. Dark Naruto smirked saying, you're only partly right. True, although you ripped the access from the dais where it was lying dormant, but there was enough chakra present to sustain me. But in all honesty, do you think I've been able to influence him to such a degree off of the scraps of chakra that were left to me? The dark Naruto raised his hand and suddenly the corridor disappeared to be replaced by the Falls of Truth. How? Hashirama exclaimed, looking around in shock. Why, you were just talking about it. Dark Naruto said, smirking, you know you have some rather dark memories of this temple. I have been able to access the memories of this place ever since both of you have been trying to heal his damaged psyche. A betrayal, it's such a beautiful emotion. Why, it almost feels as good as when the villagers slammed that blade into my chest and tried to rip my heart out. I was just 4 years old. Both of them gasped upon hearing that, causing the dark version of Naruto to say, oh, I'm sorry, did the fool fail to mention that to you? Makes you wonder what else he's hiding from you, doesn't it? Focusing back on Lady Mito, he said, come on Lady Mito, don't pretend you truly give a rat's ass about this child's dream. These are the same people that forgot you and your country, and their sacrifice for nearly half a century, and you really want to be reunited with your brethren. Why, I imagine Konoha was snickering for years after abandoning your clansmen and country to the death. Shut up, Lady Mito shouted, losing her composure. I will not be lectured by some puppet that took a false aspiration to become real. The dark Naruto chuckled, saying, there you go again, acting as if I'm not the real Naruto. If all it takes to be considered real is to be flesh and blood, then once I break the child's will, I'll be the one calling the shots, because as you well know, being considered real is a matter of perspective. For a moment Lady Mito and Hashirama were confused as to what the construct of Naruto was alluding to. However, a memory flashed of Madara confronting the Shodai Hokage, saying, Hashirama, you are merely a single life, an existence of energy that once was under an ultimate form's submission. Hit by a revelation, Hashirama thought towards the dark Naruto. Is that how you see the world? The dark Naruto smirked as if it had heard the silent question. But then a pair of arms wrapped around it from behind, and Naruto, who had been crying silently ever since he had been forced to see his memories from this age to his date of birth and had recovered, whispered softly, I'm not sure what to think of what you are at the moment, but I do realize that you are an aspect of what I must feel on some level, and since you are a part of me, I care for you too as I would for my own self. The dark Naruto's eye shot wide open at Naruto's words. It shouted, let go of me. However, despite its words, the construct of Naruto's dark emotion seemed to melt into the embrace. But then it felt as if the existence it had fought so hard to maintain was beginning to slip away, and surprised the boy by pulling loose of his grip. Spinning, it formed a wind blade in its hand, shouting, do you think that's all it would take, you spouting some nonsense about existence and cooperation to make me go away? I want. The construct trailed off as it began to bring the blade forward, and Naruto could see tears appearing in its eyes. Yet, before it could strike, Hashirama grabbed it by the neck from behind, and almost before it had time to react, the dark Naruto burst into red and blue chakra as it slowly was absorbed by Naruto slowly. Lady Mito, who was shocked by the sudden end, asked, what did you two do? Hashirama brought the hand he had gripped the dark aspect of Naruto with towards Naruto's stomach, saying, he merely reabsorbed the chakra he had managed to gather since the day of the sealing, or his birth. I just temporarily calmed it for Naruto to do so. Lady Mito could sense that both of them were holding something back, so asked, but what about him? I think he just wanted a chance to exist, to experience. Lady Mito, the matter has been resolved, Naruto said. It was only a single small aspect of my personality, unable to feel anything but the negative emotions that I needed to crack the seal. Those emotions exist in me, yes, but not to the extent it would have wanted you to believe. Lady Mito wasn't sure if Naruto and Hashirama believed what they were saying. However, as the alternative would be to once more let a darkness loose inside Naruto, she nodded and accepted their words. Flashback end. Naruto let out a sigh. He knew that the problem hadn't been sorted fully but partially. He was going to face his inner darkness once again. He had been lucky as he had allowed his instincts to guide him rather than go in with guns blazing. They had saved him from going over the cycle of fighting with his aspect and then realizing the truth later. It was so cliched that it wasn't funny. That is why he had simply tried to keep a lid on his emotions. He though understood that he needed to ease the worries of his friends. Or rather, as Naruto preferred them, as his precious people. Looking at Anko, he fought the urge to smirk as the woman was glaring rather heatedly at him. Some of his mirth must have shown, for the woman's face softened and she said, reminiscing again, "Aren't you Naruto-kun? I hope you have finished your wool gathering, for we still have work to do." Naruto nodded before he fell back into his stoic mode once again. He raised a hand seal and molded the chakra he needed and visualized what he wanted. He did not want to damage the Uzumaki temple as well. Doton Retsura Tensho, earth release, split earth turned around palm. He intoned softly, his voice just above a whisper. Just as he visualized, an entire area over half a kilometer flipped over and turned around, leaving no traces of the overgrown vegetation that was around it, leaving a bare and unblemished clearing. Though the land piece he had turned was nearly square in shape, the land around the Uzumaki temple was untouched, as was the monument. He exhaled softly as the technique came to an end and he let the rest of his chakra flow back into his system. He looked back and saw Anko grin at him while giving him a thumbs up. He then heard slow clapping and turned around to see Lord Hashirama clapping softly, looking at him with pride. Looking at his protege, Hashirama smiled before he looked his handiwork once again. "Good work, Naruto. Though you initially molded more chakra than necessary, but you will reach that point with practice. Rest all seems to have been done perfectly. Though, it seems that I have some work to do. Stand back and let me show you something unique." Hashirama stood for a minute absolutely still and then suddenly opened his eyes. A set of markings appeared on his face showing that he was using the Sage mode. Senpu Mokutan, Shichuka no Jutsu, he intoned, and both Naruto and Anko watched stunned as the area before them changed dramatically. Hashirama grinned to himself, seeing the expressions on his cute little students. He was so awesome that he would have loved to shout it from the top of the Hokage monument. "Take that, Madara. I still have it." He cheered to himself mentally.